Standing outside the glass doors of the Sterling Grand, I watched my sister Madison physically block my path while Mother stood behind her, shaking her head in disapproval. "You can't afford to eat here." Madison laughed, her designer heels clicking against the marble entrance. "Dad's birthday dinner is for successful family members only." The doorman shifted uncomfortably, recognizing me but staying silent per my strict instructions. As my security chief, Marcus, approached from inside, I touched the ownership papers tucked in my purse, waiting for the perfect moment. The January wind whipped through downtown Seattle as I stood frozen on the sidewalk processing Madison's words. My brother Nathan had called me 3 days earlier with the invitation, his voice carrying that careful tone he used when Mother was nearby. "Dad's 70th birthday dinner is this Saturday at the Sterling Grand," he'd said. 7 o'clock sharp, private dining room. I should have known something was wrong when Mother called an hour later. Her voice dripped with false concern as she suggested I might be more comfortable sitting this one out. "The Sterling Grand is terribly expensive, Loretta," she'd said. "Prix menu starts at $300 per person. I know things have been tight for you since the bakery situation." The bakery situation. 5 years later, and she still couldn't bring herself to call it what it was, my dream crashing down in bankruptcy. Not that she'd offered help when I was drowning in debt, working 18-hour days trying to save it. No mother had been too busy planning Madison's wedding to a pharmaceutical executive and celebrating Nathan's promotion to chief of surgery. But I'd decided to come anyway. Dad deserved to have all his children present for his milestone birthday. I'd arrived in my 2008 Toyota Camry, parking between a Tesla and a Bentley in the valet section. The young attendant had practically sprinted to my door, his face lighting up with recognition. "Ms. Sterling, what a pleasure to see you this evening," he'd started to say before I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. Timothy, whom I'd personally hired 6 months ago after he'd been turned away by 3 other hotels for his criminal record, immediately understood. "I mean, welcome to the Sterling Grand, miss. Will you be dining with us tonight?" Madison had materialized from nowhere, her Chanel dress catching the light from the hotel's crystal exterior fixtures. She looked me up and down, taking in my simple black dress from Target and the coat I'd bought at Goodwill. "Loretta, what are you doing here?" "Coming to Dad's birthday dinner," I'd replied, moving toward the entrance. That's when she'd stepped directly in my path, spreading her arms like a designer-clad barrier. "I don't think so. This isn't the kind of place where you can order water and breadsticks, sister dear." Mother had emerged from the lobby, then her pearls gleaming against her burgundy dress. She'd sighed, that particular sigh she reserved for me, the one that said I was once again failing to meet her expectations. "Loretta, we discussed this. Your presence will only make everyone uncomfortable. Think of your father. He doesn't need the stress of worrying about you affording your meal on his special day." "I can pay for my own dinner," I'd said quietly. Madison had actually laughed at that, a tinkling sound that carried across the valet area. Several arriving guests glanced our way and Mother's face tightened. "Please don't make a scene," she'd hissed. "You're already attracting attention. Look at yourself. Your coat has a tear in the sleeve. Your shoes are scuffed. This is a 5-star establishment, not the public library where you stamp books all day." Through the towering windows, I could see the private dining room being prepared. Nathan was already inside, checking his phone, while his wife Emma arranged place cards on the table. My younger sister Grace had arrived early, too, her startup founder boyfriend Kyle helping her with her coat. They all looked like they belonged there, moving through the space with the confidence of people who never had to check prices on menus. "I'm Dad's daughter, too," I'd said, hating how small my voice sounded. Madison had rolled her eyes dramatically. "Being related doesn't mean you belong in every space. Some of us have worked hard to achieve a certain lifestyle. Some of us married well. Some of us didn't waste our parents' investment on a failed cupcake shop." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. It hadn't been just a cupcake shop. It had been a full bakery, my grandmother's recipes brought to life a gathering place for the neighborhood. But explaining that to Madison would be like describing color to someone determined to see only in black and white. Marcus had chosen that moment to approach the doors from inside. 6 feet 4 inches of retired Navy SEAL, he moved with the kind of purpose that made people step aside without being asked. His eyes found mine through the glass, a question in them. I gave the slightest shake of my head. Not yet. Behind Madison and Mother, more family members were arriving. I saw my Aunt Patricia's Mercedes pull up, followed by my Uncle Robert's BMW. The extended family who'd all somehow been too busy to visit when I was sleeping on a friend's couch after losing my apartment. That's when Timothy the valet made a small mistake. As he took keys from another guest, he called out, "Don't worry, Miss Sterling, I'll have your car brought around whenever you're ready." Madison's head whipped toward him, then back to me. "Miss Sterling, did you tell the staff you're someone important? That's pathetic even for you." But I saw something flicker in Mother's eyes, a moment of uncertainty. She studied my face more carefully, perhaps noticing for the first time that despite my modest clothes, I stood differently than I had 5 years ago. My shoulders were back. My chin was raised. The broken girl who'd sobbed in bankruptcy court had been replaced by someone else entirely. Still, she shook off whatever doubt had crept in. "Come now, Madison. Let's go inside. The other guests are arriving, and I won't have them seeing us argue with Loretta on the sidewalk like common people." As they turned toward the door, Madison threw one last barb over her shoulder. "There's a Denny's 2 blocks down, more your speed. They're probably hiring 2 if you want to pick up a second job." Marcus had reached the door now, his hand on the handle from the inside. Through the glass, his lips moved silently. "Now." I touched the papers in my purse again, feeling their weight. 5 years of secrets, 5 years of careful planning, 5 years of letting my family believe I was nobody while I built an empire they couldn't even imagine. "Not yet," I mouthed back. "Let them dig themselves just a little bit deeper." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched the birthday celebration taking shape. The private dining room sparkled with candlelight, each table setting more elaborate than most people's wedding china. Nathan stood near the head of the table, his surgeon's hands gesturing as he spoke to a colleague I recognized from the hospital's promotional materials. His wife, Emma, hung on his every word, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light each time she moved. They'd been married 3 years now, a union Mother never tired of praising as perfectly matched in every way. Madison had swept inside, immediately commanding attention, as she always did. She air-kissed our cousin Bethany, who'd just arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume and false eyelashes. Grace looked up from her phone, her expression carefully neutral, as Madison no doubt recounted the scene outside. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the theatrical gestures, the mock concern, the delicate hand pressed to her chest in feigned shock at my audacity. Mother had positioned herself as the gracious matriarch, greeting each arriving guest with the kind of warmth she'd never shown me. Not since the bakery failed. Not since I'd proven myself unworthy of the Bennett family legacy of success. Still out here. A familiar voice made me turn. Cousin Bethany had come back outside, ostensibly to wait for her husband, but really to enjoy the spectacle. "Madison says you're trying to crash the party. Honestly, Loretta, have some dignity." "I was invited," I said simply. Bethany laughed, a sharp sound that reminded me of breaking glass. Being invited and being welcome are 2 different things. You know how your mother is about appearances. The Sterling Grand. "Really? This place is $500 a head minimum. That's probably more than you make in a week at that little library job." $3,200, actually. That was my official salary at the library, the job I'd kept, because I genuinely loved it and because it provided the perfect cover. Nobody questioned a librarian driving an old car or living in a modest apartment. Nobody suspected a librarian of anything more ambitious than organizing book clubs and children's reading programs. "I can afford dinner." I repeated the same words I'd said to Madison. Bethany's husband, Derek, joined us, his eyes already glazed from whatever he'd been drinking in the car. "Loretta, still fighting the good fight, I see. How's the job hunt going? Any prospects beyond stamping due dates?" I bit back the dozen responses that came to mind. How Derek's construction company was hemorrhaging money, how his last 3 projects had failed inspection, how his bonding company had called me last month, quietly inquiring if Sterling Hotels might be interested in acquiring his contracts when he inevitably defaulted. I declined. I tried not to do business with family, even family that didn't know I was in business. I'm content where I am, I said instead. Content. Mother had reappeared, having noticed Bethany and Derek's absence. What a small word for a small life. Your sister Madison just closed a deal for her husband's company that will net them $500,000 in commissions. Nathan performed a revolutionary surgery last week that will be featured in medical journals. Grace's app just received another round of funding, and you're content stamping books. She said it like content was a disease, something contagious that might infect the others if they stood too close to me. I thought of Arthur Sterling dying in his hospital bed, holding my hand as he signed the papers that would change my life. Find your own definition of success, he'd whispered. The world will try to give you theirs. Don't let them. Through the window, I saw Dad. He was laughing at something Nathan had said, his face bright with the joy of being surrounded by his children and grandchildren, except one. His eyes swept the room, a small frown appearing when he didn't find who he was looking for. Emma leaned in to whisper something, probably an excuse for my absence, that would keep him from worrying. Madison must have noticed his searching look too, because she glided over her hand on his shoulder, her mouth moving in reassuring words. I could imagine them. Don't worry about Loretta, Dad. You know how she is. Probably couldn't get off work, or couldn't afford the gas to drive here. The manager's coming, Uncle Robert announced, having wandered outside for a cigarette despite Aunt Patricia's disapproving glare. Probably wondering why we're all congregating in the cold instead of spending money inside. Indeed, through the glass doors, I could see Jonathan Winters, the hotel's general manager, making his way through the lobby. I'd promoted him just last year after the previous manager retired. He was excellent at his job, discreet and professional, which was why I'd given him strict instructions about tonight. No special recognition, no deviation from standard service. Treat me like any other guest unless I indicated otherwise. But as he drew closer, I saw the conflict in his face. His training warred with his loyalty. Here was his employer being physically barred from her own establishment while her family mocked her financial situation. His jaw tightened with each step. This is embarrassing, Mother muttered. First you make a scene, now you're drawing management. Loretta, please, just go. I'll tell your father you weren't feeling well. I'll even send you home with a piece of cake, all right. From the kitchen entrance, of course. The kitchen entrance, where the help went. Where I'd entered this very building countless times during my year of working as a night cleaner, back when I was piecing my life together after the bankruptcy. Back when Arthur Sterling had found me crying in his penthouse bathroom at 3 a.m, overwhelmed by the distance between what I'd dreamed and where I'd ended up. Madison noticed Jonathan's approach too. Perfect, she said with satisfaction. I'll explain that you're bothering our family and have them escort you off the property. I'm sure they have rules about loitering. I'm not loitering, I said. I'm standing on a public sidewalk. Technically, this is hotel property. Grace interjected, ever the precise one. She'd been quiet until now, watching the scene unfold with those calculating eyes that had made her successful in tech. The sidewalk extends to the valet stand, so technically Madison could have you removed. They were all so certain, so confident in their assumptions about my place in the world. 5 years of distance had hardened into concrete beliefs Loretta was the failure. Loretta was the embarrassment. Loretta was the cautionary tale they told their children about the importance of making smart choices. Jonathan had reached the interior side of the doors now. His hand hovered over the handle. I saw him take a breath, squaring his shoulders the way he did before difficult conversations with demanding guests. His eyes met mine through the glass, asking a silent question. In my purse beneath the ownership papers, my phone vibrated. A text from Marcus. Security feed is recording everything. Legal says we have enough documentation of denied access if you want to proceed formally. Proceed formally. Such a cold way to describe suing my own family for preventing me from entering my own hotel. But that wasn't the kind of justice I wanted. I wanted something deeper. I wanted understanding. I wanted recognition. I wanted the look on their faces when they realized how profoundly they'd misjudged me. "You know what?" Mother said, her voice taking on that false sweetness she used when she was about to deliver a killing blow. "I'll make you a deal, Loretta. If you can show me a bank statement proving you have $500 available for tonight's dinner, I'll personally escort you inside." Madison clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, that's perfect. Come on, Loretta. Show us your vast wealth. Show us how successful you've become, stamping library books and wearing secondhand clothes." $500. I thought of the bank statement sitting in my office safe, the one showing the hotel's operating accounts. The number of zeros after the first digit still sometimes took my breath away. But that statement bore the name Sterling Hospitality Holdings, not Loretta Bennett, and I wasn't ready to reveal that connection. Not yet. "I don't need to prove anything to you," I said quietly. "Because you can't," Madison concluded triumphantly. "Just like you couldn't prove your bakery would succeed. Just like you couldn't prove you deserved the family's support. Just like you can't prove you belong here tonight." Behind the glass, Jonathan's hand turned the handle. The door began to open, and in that moment I made a decision. Let them think they'd won this round. Let them go inside believing they'd protected the family from embarrassment. Because when the truth came out, it would be so much sweeter. "You're right," I said, stepping back from the entrance. "I don't belong here." Mother's face relaxed with visible relief. Madison smirked. Grace went back to her phone. Bethany and Derek shared a knowing look. Uncle Robert flicked his cigarette into the street. "Finally some sense," Mother said. "Run along now, Loretta. We'll tell your father you send your love." As they filed back inside, congratulating themselves on handling the situation, I caught Jonathan's eye one more time. His mouth moved silently. "Are you sure?" I nodded, then turned and walked back toward the valet stand where Timothy waited with my keys, his face a mask of professional composure, despite the anger I saw simmering beneath. "Your car, Ms. Bennett," he asked loudly for the benefit of my family. "Not yet," I said softly once they were all inside. "But please ask Marcus to meet me in the executive entrance. Tell him it's time for Plan B." Timothy's face split into a grin. "With pleasure, Miss Sterling. With absolute pleasure." The executive entrance was tucked around the corner, a discreet door marked only with a small brass plaque. As I waited for Marcus, my mind drifted back 5 years to the night everything changed. The night I'd hit rock bottom and found something unexpected waiting there. The bakery's failure had been swift and brutal. What started as a dream fueled by my grandmother's recipes and a small business loan had ended in a courtroom with a judge pronouncing the word bankruptcy, like a final verdict on my worth as a person. I'd gone from entrepreneur to failure in 6 months, watching everything I'd built get auctioned off piece by piece. The industrial mixer I'd saved for 2 years to buy, the custom display cases where I'd arranged fresh pastries each morning, even the hand-painted sign that read Grandma Rose's Bakery in cheerful yellow letters. Mother had sat in the back of the courtroom that day, her face a mask of disappointment. She'd left before the proceedings ended, but not before I heard her whisper to Aunt Patricia. "I told her not to use Mother's name for this foolishness. Now she's dragged it through the mud." The family support evaporated overnight. The same siblings who'd eaten my free samples and promised to spread the word suddenly had other commitments. Nathan was too busy with his residency. Madison was planning her engagement party. Grace was launching her first startup. And I was moving out of my apartment into a friend's basement, selling my car, and applying for any job that would have me. The library position had been a lifeline, but barely. $28,000 a year wasn't enough to live on in Seattle, not with bankruptcy payments and basic expenses. So I'd taken a second job through a cleaning service, working nights at office buildings. The third job, weekend shifts at a grocery store, had pushed me to 18-hour days. I'd lost 30 pounds I couldn't afford to lose, survived on expired food from the store, and learned to ignore the constant ache of exhaustion. The Sterling Grand had been just another building on my cleaning route. I'd been assigned to the executive floors and penthouse, working from midnight to 6 in the morning. The first week, I'd been too tired to appreciate the marble floors and crystal chandeliers. By the second week, I'd started to notice things, like how the hotel ran with clockwork precision even in the dead of night, like how every employee from security guards to night auditors moved with purpose and pride. It was my third week when I'd met Arthur Sterling. I'd been cleaning the penthouse bathroom, scrubbing marble that cost more per square foot than I made in a month when the tears had started. Exhaustion, despair, and loneliness had finally overwhelmed my defenses. I'd sat on the floor, my back against the gold-flecked wall, and sobbed into my cleaning gloves. "That's imported from Italy," a voice had said. "The marble, I mean. Probably not the best surface for tears. Too porous." I'd jumped up so fast I'd knocked over my bucket, sending soapy water across the pristine floor. An elderly man stood in the doorway wearing silk pajamas and an amused expression. Arthur Sterling, owner of the hotel, employer of hundreds, titan of the hospitality industry, watching me have a breakdown on his bathroom floor. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. I'll clean this up immediately. Please don't report me to the service. I need this job. I know I shouldn't have been sitting down, but I just needed a moment, and I thought you were asleep, and I promise it won't happen again." The words had tumbled out in a panicked rush, but instead of anger, his face had shown something unexpected kindness. "My dear girl," he'd said, "anyone cleaning bathrooms at 3 in the morning has earned the right to a moment of despair. Would you like some tea? I was making some anyway. Insomnia is one of the few perks of old age." That's how I'd found myself sitting in Arthur Sterling's kitchen drinking tea from cups that belonged in a museum, telling him my story. The bakery, the bankruptcy, the family who'd written me off, the 3 jobs that barely kept me afloat. He'd listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood more about business than I'd ever learned in my community college courses. "You know what your problem was," he'd said finally. "You had the passion but not the knowledge, the recipes but not the revenue model, the dream but not the details. Heart without head rarely succeeds in business." "So I'm a failure," I'd concluded. "No," he'd said firmly. "You're educated now. Expensively educated, granted, but educated nonetheless. The question is, what will you do with that education?" That had been the beginning. Night after night, as I cleaned his penthouse, Arthur would appear with tea and conversation. He'd quiz me about the hotel's operations, challenging me to think beyond mops and marble. "What would you change about the check-in process?" he'd ask. Or, "How would you improve employee retention?" Or, "What's wrong with our restaurant's lunch service?" At first I'd been hesitant, sure it was some kind of test I was destined to fail, but gradually I'd started observing more carefully, listening to night staff complaints, watching guest patterns, thinking like an owner instead of a cleaner. My suggestions had been naive at first, but Arthur had been patient, teaching me to see the bigger picture. 6 months into our strange mentorship, he'd made an offer that had stunned me. "I want you to shadow my management team. During the day. Paid, of course. You'll keep the cleaning job for appearances, but you'll learn the real business." Why, I'd asked. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you remind me of myself," he'd said. "Broke, desperate, and too proud to quit. Because you work harder than any of my executives. Because you still cry over your grandmother's recipes, which tells me you understand that hospitality is about heart, not just profit. And because I'm old, my children are vultures, and I'd like to leave this place to someone who'll appreciate it." "Your children?" I'd started, but he'd waved me off. "James and Patricia haven't set foot in this hotel in 5 years, unless they needed money. They'll contest whatever I decide, so we'll have to be careful. Legal, airtight. Are you willing to work for it?" I'd said yes. Of course I'd said yes. And for 2 years, I'd lived a double life. Library clerk by day, cleaner by night, secret apprentice in every stolen moment between. Arthur had taught me everything: financial management, staff development, guest relations, contract negotiations. He'd introduced me to his lawyers, his accountants, his trusted managers, all bound by ironclad non-disclosure agreements. The cancer diagnosis had accelerated everything. Pancreatic stage 4, 6 months at best. Arthur had faced it with the same dry humor he brought to everything. "At least I'll get to see their faces when the will is read," he'd said, almost worth dying for. The legal documents had been meticulous, not just the hotel's 12 properties across the country, but the holding companies, the real estate, the investment portfolios, all structured to withstand the inevitable challenges from James and Patricia, all requiring me to prove myself capable of running the empire he'd built. "You can't tell anyone," his lead attorney had warned. "Not until the probate is complete and the challenges are resolved. Any hint that you're the beneficiary could give them grounds to contest based on undue influence. You keep working your regular jobs. You keep living modestly. You manage through the existing team until we give you the all clear." Arthur had died on a Tuesday morning, holding my hand in the hospital while my family remained unaware I'd taken time off from the library. His last words weren't about the hotels or the money. They were about my grandmother's lemon cupcake recipe, the one he'd made me bake for him in the hotel's kitchen. "Too much sugar," he'd whispered with a slight smile. "Rose would have used honey." The funeral had been massive, attended by hospitality industry leaders from around the world. I'd sat in the back with the hotel staff, just another employee paying respects. James and Patricia had stood at the front already calculating their inheritance. They'd been so certain of their windfall that the will reading had reportedly required medical intervention for Patricia's hysteria. But they'd been smart too, hiring the best lawyers money could buy to challenge the will. For 2 years, I'd fought them in court while maintaining my cover. 2 years of depositions and documentation of proving my competence while pretending to be nobody. 2 years of watching my family continue to dismiss me while I quietly built upon Arthur's empire, adding new properties, improving operations, increasing profits. Marcus had been one of my first executive hires after the courts had finally ruled in my favor. Former Navy SEAL, unimpeachable integrity, and most importantly, someone who understood the value of strategic patience. "You could tell them now," he'd said after the last legal challenge had been dismissed. "Nothing's stopping you." "Not yet," I'd replied. "Let them show me who they really are when they think I have nothing." Standing now at the executive entrance, I touched the brass plaque that bore Arthur's initials. Inside, my family was probably ordering their appetizers secure in their superiority. They had no idea that the girl they'd banished was about to return not as a beggar at their feast, but as the queen of this castle. The door opened and Marcus appeared. "Ready, boss." "One question first," I said. "Am I being petty?" He considered this. "You're being human. They humiliated you. Publicly. After everything else they've done, I'd say you're being remarkably restrained. Arthur would have wanted me to be gracious." "Arthur would have wanted you to be smart," Marcus corrected. "And sometimes being smart means teaching people that actions have consequences. Your call, though. We can still just have a nice dinner in your private dining room, forget they're even here." I thought about Dad checking his watch, wondering where his eldest daughter was. I thought about 5 years of birthdays and Christmases where my invitation had been conveniently lost. I thought about Madison's laugh and Mother's dismissal and the collective certainty that I'd never amount to anything. "No," I said finally. "They made their choice. Now they get to live with it." Marcus smiled and opened the door wider. "Then let's go show them what they missed." The executive elevator whisked us silently to the 3rd floor where my private office overlooked the city skyline. I rarely used this space, preferring to work from the smaller manager's office near the lobby where I could stay connected to daily operations. But tonight, I needed a moment to center myself before the confrontation ahead. Marcus stood by the window, his stance relaxed but alert. Want me to review the timeline? Sometimes it helps to remember the facts when emotions run high. I nodded, settling into the leather chair I'd inherited from Arthur. On the wall hung his portrait, those shrewd eyes seeming to watch with approval. Next to it, in a simple frame, was the front page of the Seattle Times business section from 3 years ago. Sterling heir revealed, unknown woman inherits hotel empire. Arthur died on March 15th. Marcus began his military training evident in his precise recitation. Will reading was March 22nd. James and Patricia Sterling filed their first contest on March 23rd, claiming undue influence. You'd known Arthur for 2 years at that point, been training with him for 18 months. I remembered that first challenge vividly. James had stood in the courtroom, his face purple with rage, declaring that his father had clearly been manipulated by a gold-digging cleaning woman. The press had eaten it up. Local IRS or clever con. The headlines had screamed. They dug into my bankruptcy, my failed bakery, even my college dropout status. Madison had called me not with support, but to shriek about how I'd embarrassed the family name by being associated with such a scandal. The judge required a competency evaluation, Marcus continued. 6 months of psychiatric records proved Arthur was of sound mind. Financial forensics showed every decision was documented and logical. October ruling challenge dismissed. James immediately filed appeal. Those had been brutal months. Working at the library by day while spending nights in strategy sessions with lawyers. Keeping up the pretense of poverty while paying legal bills that would have bankrupted me without Arthur's careful provision of a legal defense fund. The stress had triggered migraines that left me shaking in bathroom stalls, but I'd never missed a day of work. I couldn't afford to give anyone ammunition against me. Second challenge alleged breach of fiduciary duty, Marcus went on. Claimed you'd mismanaged assets while Arthur was ill, required full audit of 18 months of operations. That audit had been my vindication. Every decision I'd made under Arthur's guidance had been documented, analyzed, and ultimately validated. Occupancy rates had increased, staff turnover had decreased, profit margins had improved across all properties. The forensic accountants had been impressed despite themselves. One had even asked if I'd consider selling my management strategies to other chains. Patricia's challenge was more creative, I said, picking up the narrative. Alleged Arthur wasn't my first victim. Marcus snorted. Right. The theory that you were some kind of serial inheritance hunter preying on wealthy elderly men. Her lawyers actually hired private investigators to find your previous victims. The investigators had found nothing because there was nothing to find, just a trail of minimum wage jobs, community college transcripts, and a girl trying desperately to rebuild her life after failure. The judge had been scathing in his dismissal of that particular theory, noting that I'd been demonstrably destitute when I'd met Arthur. The final challenge came down to competency, Marcus said. Whether a community college dropout with a failed bakery could actually run a multi-million-dollar hotel chain. That's when things got interesting. Interesting was an understatement. The courtroom had become a business school final exam with opposing counsel, grilling me on everything from revenue management to labor law. But Arthur had prepared me well. 2 years of intensive mentorship had given me knowledge that no MBA program could have provided. I'd answered every question, solved every hypothetical, demonstrated competency that surprised even my own lawyers. The real turning point was when you presented the 5-year plan. Marcus reminded me, the one you'd developed with Arthur before his diagnosis. I'd fought to keep my voice steady as I'd presented that plan to the court, knowing Arthur would never see it implemented. Expansion into boutique properties, diversification into residential developments, staff profit-sharing programs that would make Sterling Hotels an industry leader in employee satisfaction. The judge had asked pointed questions, clearly expecting me to falter. Instead, I'd shown him financial projections, market analyses, architectural renderings, all the work Arthur and I had done during those late-night sessions. James actually tried to hire you after that, Marcus said with a chuckle. Offered you a position running his investment firm if you'd sign away the hotels. $2 million in a Manhattan apartment, I recalled. He was so certain everyone had a price. But I'd remembered Arthur's words. They think money is power, but money is just a tool. Purpose is power. Vision is power. The ability to see what others miss and the courage to act on it that's real power. Patricia went a different route, Marcus continued. The emotional manipulation, suddenly wanting to bond with her father's chosen heir. Those lunches had been exhausting. Patricia weeping over white wine, lamenting how she'd failed as a daughter, hinting that perhaps we could share the inheritance like sisters. She'd even brought childhood photos of Arthur trying to humanize herself. But her eyes had remained calculating, and the recorder in her purse, discovered by Marcus during a routine security sweep, had revealed her true intentions. 3 years of legal battles, I said, standing to pace. $40 million in legal fees, all covered by Arthur's defense fund. 7 judges, 3 appeals courts, 2 attempts at mediation. And through it all, I kept working at that library, living in that studio apartment, driving that old car. Because you're smart, Marcus said. Any sign of premature celebration, any hint of counting chickens before they hatched, and they'd have used it against you. You played the long game perfectly. The long game. I thought of all the times my family had invited me to things during those 3 years, always last minute, always with the caveat that I probably couldn't afford it anyway. The Christmas where Madison had given everyone designer scarves except me, I'd received a $10 gift card to a coffee shop. The family reunion where Mother had introduced me as Loretta, she works in a library, while spending 20 minutes detailing Nathan's surgical achievements. The final ruling came down 23 months ago, Marcus said. Complete victory, all challenges dismissed with prejudice, no further appeals possible. Sterling Hotels and all associated assets transferred to you free and clear. And I still didn't tell them, I mused. Even then, with nothing stopping me, I kept the secret. You were waiting for something, Marcus observed. What? I considered the question. What had I been waiting for? An apology that would never come. A sudden realization of my worth, or had I simply been protecting myself, knowing that revealing my success would only change their treatment of me for superficial reasons? I think I was waiting to see if they'd ever value me for myself, I said finally. Not my money, not my connections, just me, Loretta, their daughter, their sister. And tonight gave you the answer, Marcus said softly. Through the office windows, I could see the private dining room 3 floors below. The party was in full swing now, laughter and conversation drifting up through the night air. They'd moved on from my absence, probably relieved to avoid the awkwardness of having the family failure at the table. Arthur warned me, I said. He told me wealth reveals character, it doesn't create it. He said I'd learn who really cared about me and who only cared about what I could do for them. Smart man, Marcus agreed. So what now? You've won every legal battle, built the business beyond even his expectations, proved everyone wrong. What's left? I turned from the window, decision crystallizing. Now I find out if any of them are capable of growth. If success only reveals character, maybe humility can transform it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's optimistic. It's hope, I corrected. The same hope I had when I was scrubbing Arthur's bathroom floors, believing life had more to offer. The same hope that built this empire. If I could change, maybe they can too. And if they can't, I moved toward the door, ready to face whatever came next. Then at least I'll know I gave them the chance. Arthur always said the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's proving yourself right. Tonight, either way, I do both. Marcus fell into step beside me as we headed back to the elevator. For what it's worth, Boss Arthur would be proud. You've become everything he saw in you and more. As the elevator descended, I thought about the girl who'd sobbed on a bathroom floor 5 years ago, certain her life was over. She'd had no idea it was just beginning. That rock bottom would become her foundation. that the very people who'd abandoned her would one day stand in her hotel subject to her grace or judgment. The elevator opened at the lobby level. Through the restaurant's glass walls, I could see my family raising their glasses in a toast. To Dad, presumably. To family. To success. To everything they thought I'd never achieve. Time to join the party. The main lobby of the Sterling Grand hummed with elegant activity as Marcus and I crossed the marble expanse. A string quartet played Vivaldi near the fountain, their music providing sophisticated ambiance for the well-heeled guests checking in for the weekend. Several staff members noticed me, their eyes widening with recognition, but my subtle head shake kept them silent. Not yet. Outside the glass doors, I could see the scene had evolved. Madison now stood with her hands on her hips, speaking animatedly to someone on her phone. Mother had been joined by Aunt Patricia, and their body language suggested a strategy session. Grace lingered near the entrance, her expression unreadable as she typed on her phone. "Shall we use the main entrance?" Marcus asked quietly. "Make them move aside." "No," I decided. "Let them think they've won this round. We'll circle back through the restaurant." But as we approached the alternate entrance, the situation outside escalated. My Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the valet area, sharp with indignation. She'd spotted something that offended her sense of propriety. Through the windows, I watched Uncle Robert stumble slightly, catching himself on a potted topiary. His face was flushed, and I realized he'd been drinking more heavily than usual. Patricia grabbed his arm, hissing something about embarrassing her in public. The valet staff stood at attention, professionally ignoring the family drama unfolding in their workspace. Timothy maintained his position, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. Another family had arrived, the Weatherby's old Money Seattle regular guests who always requested the penthouse suite I kept reserved for special occasions. Margaret Weatherby, 70 years old and sharp as a surgical scalpel, paused to observe the scene. Her eyes found me through the glass, and she raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. I'd negotiated with her last year when she'd wanted to host her charity gala at the hotel. She'd driven a hard bargain, but we'd developed a mutual respect. "Is that your family blocking the door, dear?" she asked Madison, who'd ended her phone call. "How unusual." Madison flushed, suddenly aware that their behavior was attracting attention from people who mattered in their social circles. "We're just handling a small family matter, Mrs. Weatherby. Nothing to concern yourself with." "Indeed," Margaret said dryly, her gaze shifting to me again. She knew exactly who I was, had known since the Business Journal ran that feature article about young hotel entrepreneurs. But like the consummate society player she was, she revealed nothing. "Well, do handle it quickly. Some of us have reservations." The criticism, mild as it was, sent Mother into damage control mode. "Of course, Mrs. Weatherby. Madison, Patricia, let's continue this inside. We're making a scene." But their retreat was blocked by another arrival. 3 black town cars pulled up simultaneously, and my stomach tightened as I recognized the lead vehicle. James Sterling stepped out, followed by Patricia Sterling Arthur's children. My former legal adversaries, the would-be heirs who'd spent 3 years trying to destroy me. "What are they doing here?" Marcus muttered, his hand instinctively moving toward his concealed weapon before catching himself. I knew exactly what they were doing here. Tomorrow was the anniversary of Arthur's death. They came every year making a public show of mourning at the hotel their father had built and they'd lost. Usually I arranged to be traveling during their visits, avoiding the inevitable confrontation. But this year, with Dad's birthday, I'd stayed in town. James looked older, grayer, the years of legal defeats etched into the lines around his mouth. He wore an expensive suit that couldn't hide the slight stoop of his shoulders. Patricia followed her face, a mask of Botox and bitterness diamonds glittering at her throat in defiant display of wealth she'd inherited from her mother, not her father. They walked toward the entrance heads high, pretending not to notice the staff's uncomfortable recognition. Then James saw me through the glass, and his step faltered. "You," he said the word carrying across the space like an accusation. My family, still clustered near the entrance, turned to look. Mother's confusion was evident as she took in the well-dressed couple glaring at me with undisguised hostility. "Excuse me," Patricia Sterling said to Mother, her voice dripping with false courtesy. "But that woman is not welcome here. She's a thief and a con artist who manipulated my poor father in his final years." Madison's eyes widened with delight at this unexpected ammunition. "Really, Loretta, what did you do now?" "I have every right to be here," I said quietly, staying behind the glass. James Sterling laughed an ugly sound. "Right. You have no rights. You stole everything from us. Our father's legacy, our birthright, our future. And now you dare show your face at his hotel?" "His hotel." I repeated, my voice carrying just enough to be heard. Interesting choice of pronoun. Mother stepped forward, her social instincts overriding her earlier dismissal of me. "I'm sorry, but who are you? And what does my daughter have to do with your family affairs?" Patricia's eyes glittered with malicious pleasure. "Your daughter!" "Oh, this is rich. You don't know, do you? Your precious daughter is Loretta Sterling, the cleaning woman who connived her way into our father's will. She inherited the entire Sterling Hotel empire through manipulation and elder abuse." The silence that followed was deafening. My family stood frozen, processing this information. Madison's mouth actually fell open. Grace's fingers stilled on her phone. Nathan, who'd come outside to find everyone, looked like someone had hit him with a medical textbook. Mother's voice, when she found it, was strangled. "That's impossible. Loretta works at a library. She drives a 10-year-old car. She couldn't afford her own apartment until last year." "All an act," James spat. "Part of her con. Pretend to be poor while sitting on millions. We spent 3 years in court trying to expose her, but she'd covered her tracks too well." I felt Marcus tense beside me, ready to intervene, but I placed a hand on his arm. This confrontation had been inevitable. Perhaps it was better to have it now, with witnesses, with my family watching. Uncle Robert, swaying slightly, burst into inappropriate laughter. "Loretta! Our Loretta owns hotels." He turned to his wife. "Patricia, your niece owns hotels. The one you said would end up homeless." "Shut up, Robert," Aunt Patricia hissed, but her eyes were fixed on me with a calculating expression I recognized. The same look she'd had when she'd discovered Nathan was going to be a doctor. The same look when Madison had announced her engagement to money. Grace stepped forward, her analytical mind already working through the implications. The Sterling Hotels merger was in the news 3 years ago. 47 properties nationwide, estimated value over $2 billion. She looked at me through the glass. "You're that Sterling, "She's a fraud," Patricia Sterling insisted. "My father wasn't in his right mind. He gave everything to a stranger instead of his own children." "Your father," I said, finally stepping outside to face them directly, "was the most brilliant man I ever met, and he was completely sound of mind when he chose to leave his legacy to someone who would honor it, not sell it off for parts." James's face purpled. "How dare you speak about him? You didn't know him. You couldn't possibly understand." I understood that he was lonely. I cut him off. That his own children visited only when they needed money. That he spent holidays alone in his penthouse while you vacationed in Europe on his credit cards. I understood that he wanted his life's work preserved, not liquidated. "You manipulated him," Patricia shrieked, losing her composure entirely. "Played on his emotions, turned him against us." "I cleaned his bathrooms," I said simply, "made him tea, listened to his stories, learned from his wisdom, loved him like the father figure he became. That's not manipulation. That's human connection." My mother staggered backward, catching herself on Madison's arm. "You own this hotel, all the Sterling hotels." "Yes," I confirmed, meeting her eyes steadily. "I own this hotel. The one you just said I couldn't afford to enter. The one where you insisted I'd embarrass the family by trying to eat at. The one where my own sister physically blocked me from attending my father's birthday dinner." Madison's face cycled through expressions like a slot machine: disbelief, calculation, embarrassment, anger, before settling on defensive hostility. "You lied to us. All these years, you let us think you were poor." I never lied, I corrected. I just didn't correct your assumptions. You decided I was a failure after the bakery closed. You never asked what came next. This is ridiculous, Mother said, rallying her dignity. If you really owned this place, you would have said something. No one keeps that kind of secret from their own family. Grace held up her phone, showing a business article with my photograph. She's telling the truth. Loretta Sterling, heir to the Sterling hospitality empire. It's all here. The legal battles, the confirmation of inheritance, even a profile in Forbes from last year. The Forbes article. I'd tried to decline that interview, but my PR team had insisted it was necessary for the brand. The photographer had wanted to shoot me in designer clothes in the penthouse, but I'd insisted on business attire in a working office. The headline had read, "From Rags to Riches, the cleaning woman who built an empire." "But you kept working at the library," Nathan said, finding his voice. "I saw you there just last month when I was returning medical journals." "Because I love it," I said. "Because it keeps me grounded. Because Mrs. Chen needs someone who understands the Dewey Decimal System, and Tommy Martinez lights up when I save new dinosaur books for him. Not everything is about money." James Sterling stepped forward aggressively, and Marcus shifted position, a subtle but clear warning. "Don't you dare act noble. You're nothing but a gold digger who got lucky. My father's empire should have stayed in the family." "It did," I said quietly, "just not the family you expected." The implications of my words hung in the air. Inside the hotel, through the glass walls, I could see the party continuing. Dad was laughing at something, unaware of the drama unfolding outside. The Sterling Grand hummed with life and purpose, exactly as Arthur had envisioned. "I need to sit down," Mother said faintly. But there was no respite coming. Jonathan Winters, my general manager, had finally reached the breaking point. He emerged from the hotel, flanked by 2 security officers, his face professional but determined. "Ms. Sterling," he said, addressing me formally, "I apologize for the disturbance. Shall I have security escort the disruptive individuals from the property?" The question was aimed at me, but his eyes included all of them, James and Patricia Sterling, who'd tormented me for years, but also my own family who'd blocked me from entering my own establishment. Madison gasped, "You can't evict us. We have a reservation. We're paying customers." "Actually," Jonathan said smoothly, "the owner has ultimate discretion over who enjoys the privilege of our hospitality." He turned back to me. "Your instructions, Miss Sterling." The power felt strange in my hands. With a word, I could ban them all. Have them escorted away in front of Seattle society? It would be justified after their treatment of me. It might even feel satisfying for a moment. But I thought of Dad inside celebrating his birthday, unaware of the storm outside. I thought of Arthur, who'd taught me that grace was the ultimate power move. I thought of the future, and whether I wanted it defined by revenge or reconciliation. "No evictions," I said finally. "But James and Patricia Sterling are banned from the property after tonight. They've said goodbye to their father's legacy for the last time." James opened his mouth to protest, but Patricia grabbed his arm. She knew they had no recourse. The courts had been clear. I held all the cards. As for my family, I continued looking at each of them in turn. They're welcome to stay for my father's birthday dinner, if they can find it in themselves to enter as my guests, knowing who I really am. The challenge hung between us. Marcus stood ready. Jonathan waited for further instructions. The valet staff pretended not to watch, and my family, the people who dismissed me, diminished me, denied me, had to decide if their pride was worth more than their curiosity. It was Grace who moved first. "I'd like to hear the whole story," she said simply, "if you're willing to tell it." One by one, they had to choose. And in that moment, I realized this had been Arthur's final lesson. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about giving them the chance to prove themselves better than their worst moments. The glass doors stood open. The question was who would walk through them. Marcus stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 6 feet 4 inches of trained muscle and discipline, he had a way of making space around him without saying a word. His eyes swept the assembled group before settling on me with professional deference. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his deep voice carrying across the valet area. "I apologize for the delay in reaching you. There was a situation in the North Wing that required brief attention." His gaze shifted meaningfully to James and Patricia Sterling. "Nothing we couldn't handle, of course. We're quite experienced with difficult guests." Madison's laugh came out as a strangled squeak. "Ms. Sterling. You're actually calling her Ms. Sterling. This has to be some kind of elaborate prank." She whirled on me. "Did you hire actors? Is this your pathetic attempt at revenge for being excluded?" "Actors." Marcus raised one eyebrow, a gesture that somehow conveyed volumes of disdain. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus Chen, head of security for Sterling Hotels, former Navy SEAL, 10 years of service Silver Star recipient. I don't do amateur theater." "But your name is Chen," Mother said weakly. "She couldn't have hired you. We were told never to use that name." I closed my eyes briefly. Of course that's what she would focus on. Mother Marcus is Korean-American third generation and one of the most decorated veterans in the state. The fact that you think his surname disqualifies him from employment says more about your prejudices than his capabilities. Jonathan stepped smoothly into the conversation. "If I may add, Ms. Sterling personally recruited Mr. Chen from a distinguished career in private security. He's revolutionized our safety protocols across all properties. We're fortunate to have him." "All properties," Nathan repeated slowly. "How many properties are we talking about?" Grace, still studying her phone, answered before I could. "According to the latest SEC filings, Sterling Hospitality Holdings operates 47 hotels across the United States, with 3 more under construction. Annual revenue last fiscal year was approximately $800 million. $800 million, Madison whispered. Her face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "That's impossible. You're a librarian." "I'm many things," I said. "A librarian, a hotel owner, a businesswoman, a daughter who wasn't important enough to include in her father's birthday dinner until you discovered my net worth." James Sterling, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly erupted. "This is exactly what she does. Plays the victim while sitting on stolen wealth. My father built this empire over 60 years, and she swooped in at the end like a vulture." "Enough," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something harder. "Mr. Sterling, you're on private property. The owner has graciously allowed you to remain for now, but if you continue to harass her, I'll have you removed." "Harass her," James sputtered. "She stole everything from us." "The courts disagreed," I said evenly. "Multiple courts, actually. Over 3 years of litigation. Every claim you made was investigated and dismissed. Your father made his choice and the law upheld it." Patricia Sterling pushed forward, her face twisted with years of resentment. "You turned him against us, poisoned his mind, made him think we didn't love him." "I never mentioned you to him," I said, and it was true. "I didn't have to. Your absence spoke louder than any words could. Do you know he kept a calendar in his study marking the days since your last visit? When I met him, it had been 847 days. The number hit them like a physical blow. Patricia's face crumpled for just a moment before hardening again. "We were busy. We had lives." "So did he," I said softly. "A life that ended with a stranger holding his hand because his children couldn't be bothered." "You're not a stranger," Uncle Robert slurred, pointing at me with the hand not clutching his wife for balance. "You're my niece, my rich, secret, hotel-owning niece." He giggled, the sound inappropriate and somehow perfect for the surreal moment. "Patricia, we should have been nicer at Christmas." Aunt Patricia elbowed him sharply, but her eyes were calculating. I could see her reshuffling the family hierarchy in her head, recalibrating my position from embarrassing failure to useful connection. "This still doesn't make sense," Mother said, her voice stronger now as she processed the situation. "Even if you inherited these hotels, why keep it secret? Why let your family think you were struggling?" Would it have changed how you treated me? I asked. Would you have suddenly included me in family events, called on my birthdays, visited when I was sick, or would you have just wanted things from me? The silence that followed was answer enough. Madison, however, wasn't ready to concede. This could all be an elaborate lie, some conspiracy between you and these people. How do we know you really own anything? Jonathan sighed, reaching into his jacket to produce a leather folder. I anticipated this might be necessary. He opened it, revealing official documents. Articles of incorporation for Sterling Hospitality Holdings, listing Loretta Sterling as sole owner and CEO. Business license for this property specifically showing the same. Would you like to see the deed tax records? Perhaps the insurance policies? I can pull up the corporate filings online. Grace offered her fingers, already flying across her phone screen. Washington State Business Registry shows, yes, Loretta A. Sterling, registered agent and owner of Sterling Hospitality Holdings, incorporated 4 years ago. 4 years, Mother repeated. You've owned this for 4 years. I've controlled it for 3 years since the legal challenges were resolved, I clarified. But Arthur began training me 5 years ago, right after we met. When your bakery failed, Nathan said, suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. When I said you should have gone into something more practical, you were already learning the hotel business. I was cleaning toilets and scrubbing floors, I corrected. But yes, I was also learning. Arthur saw potential in someone everyone else had written off. Including us, Grace said quietly. It wasn't a question. Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked it, then leaned in to whisper something in my ear. I nodded, and he straightened. Ms. Sterling, the mayor, has arrived for your 8:30 meeting. Shall I ask her to wait? The mayor. Mother's voice rose an octave. You have a meeting with the mayor. We're discussing the new affordable housing initiative, I said. Sterling Hotels is converting 2 of our older properties into transitional housing for families experiencing homelessness. But yes, please ask her to wait, Marcus. Family comes first. It was a deliberate choice of words, and I saw it hit home. Family comes first, except when that family had decided I wasn't successful enough to count. I can't believe this, Madison muttered. She looked at her husband, who had emerged from the hotel to find her. Did you know about this Bradley? Bradley Morrison, pharmaceutical executive, and Madison's ticket to the upper class, looked at me with new interest. The Sterling acquisition. Of course, it was big news in the business community. There was significant speculation about the new owner. His eyes narrowed. You're the mysterious Loretta Sterling, the one who refused all media interviews for the first 2 years. I gave one interview, I admitted. To Forbes, my PR team insisted. I read that article, Bradley said slowly. You donated $50 million to small business recovery funds, specifically for entrepreneurs who'd failed their first ventures. Like bakery owners, Grace asked, understanding dawning. I nodded. Among others. Failure shouldn't be a life sentence. Sometimes it's just education in disguise. James Sterling made a disgusted sound. Giving away my father's money to losers and failures. He would be appalled. Actually, I said, the charitable foundation was his idea. He set it up the month before he died with instructions to help people who reminded him of himself at the beginning. People with more ambition than advantages. People like you, Patricia said bitterly. People like me, I agreed, though I doubt that's what he intended as an insult. Jonathan cleared his throat discreetly. Miss Sterling, perhaps we should continue this conversation inside your father's party, is wondering where the birthday family has gone. Additionally, Mrs. Weatherby has asked twice about the drama in the doorway, and you know how she enjoys sharing observations at her book club. The mention of Seattle society gossip made Mother straighten. The last thing she wanted was to be the subject of Margaret Weatherby's sharp tongue. Yes, we should go inside. This is still Thomas's birthday after all. Are we going inside as your guests? I asked pointedly. Or are you still concerned I'll embarrass the family? Madison opened her mouth, probably to deliver another barb, but Bradley touched her arm. Madison, your sister owns the hotel we're standing in front of. Perhaps it's time to reassess. It was the most diplomatic way possible of saying, "Stop being an idiot," and Madison heard it. Her face flushed, but she nodded tightly. "There's one more thing," Marcus said, producing his own phone. "Ms. Sterling, you asked me to document any instances of denied access to the property, for insurance and liability purposes, of course. You recorded us," Mother gasped. "Standard security procedure," Marcus replied blandly. "We record all disturbances at hotel entrances. Helps with liability issues. For instance, if someone were to claim they were denied access to a family event at our establishment, we'd have evidence of what actually occurred." The threat was subtle, but clear. Everything they'd said, every cruel dismissal, every mocking laugh, it was all preserved digitally. Not that I intended to use it, but they didn't need to know that. "I think," Grace said carefully, "we should go inside, all of us, together, as a family that has a lot to discuss." "Including apologies," Nathan added quietly. "Lots of apologies." Madison looked like she'd swallowed something sour, but she nodded. Mother seemed to be recalculating everything she thought she knew about me, about success, about the family hierarchy she'd so carefully maintained. "Fine," Mother said finally. "We'll go inside, all of us. But Loretta—" She paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Miss Sterling, you have some explaining to do." "I have a hotel to run," I corrected, "and a father's birthday to celebrate. Explanations can wait until after dessert." Jonathan moved to hold the door every inch the professional manager. "Welcome to the Sterling Grand," he said formally. "All of you." As we filed inside, James and Patricia Sterling remained on the sidewalk, their legal banishment, beginning the moment the rest of us entered. I paused at the threshold, looking back at Arthur's children one last time. "He loved you," I said quietly, just for them. "Despite everything, he never stopped loving you. He just loved his legacy more than your greed." Then I walked into my hotel, surrounded by the family that had rejected me to celebrate with the father who'd never stopped believing I'd find my way. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Staff members nodded respectfully as we passed. And somewhere in the private dining room, Dad was waiting about to receive the biggest surprise of his 70th birthday. The walk through my hotel with my family trailing behind was surreal. Each step across the marble floors echoed with 5 years of secrets, while staff members who'd become like extended family to me struggled to maintain professional composure. They knew my story, many had been part of it, and seeing the people who'd dismissed me now following in stunned silence must have been satisfying. Adrian, the concierge who'd been with the hotel for 15 years, couldn't quite hide his smile as he nodded. "Good evening, Miss Sterling. Your table is prepared whenever you're ready." "Thank you, Adrian," I replied. "Has Mr. Mitchell been informed about the delay? I took the liberty of having champagne sent to the private dining room with your compliments," he said smoothly. "Your father seemed pleased." Madison made a small choking sound. "You sent champagne to Dad, the $300 bottles they have here." "The Perrier Jouet Belle Époque," Adrian confirmed. "Mrs. Sterling's standing selection for special occasions." We passed the main restaurant where diners enjoyed their Friday evening meals, unaware of the family drama playing out in their midst. Through the kitchen's porthole windows, I glimpsed Chef Raymond, who spotted me and raised his hand in greeting. I'd hired him away from a Michelin-starred restaurant in New York 2 years ago, doubling his salary and giving him complete creative control. "That's Raymond Castellano," Bradley whispered to Madison. "I tried to get a reservation at his last restaurant for 3 months. How did he end up here?" "I made him an offer he couldn't refuse," I said simply. "Creative freedom, profit participation, and the chance to mentor young chefs from underprivileged backgrounds. He starts 12 apprentices every year." Nathan had been quiet since we'd entered, but his doctor's instincts kicked in when he noticed something. "Your staff keeps greeting you, but they're not surprised to see you. How often are you actually here?" "Every day when I'm in town," I admitted. "I have an office on the 3rd floor, but I spend most of my time in the operations areas." can't run a hotel from behind a desk. We reached the private elevator to the mezzanine level where our dining room waited. Grace studied the elevator's elegant details, restored brass fixtures, hand-carved panels, period-appropriate carpet that had cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. "This is original to the building," she observed. 1923 construction, wasn't it? 1922, I corrected. Arthur spent $2 million restoring just this elevator. He believed in preserving history while embracing progress. It's why our hotels maintain their original character even with modern amenities. The elevator opened onto the mezzanine where the private dining rooms overlooked the main floor through soundproof glass. Mother paused, taking in the space she'd walked through so many times before, now seeing it through different eyes. "We had Madison's engagement party here," she said slowly. "You gave us a discount, 20% off the booking fee." 30%, I corrected. "The family rate, though you wouldn't let me attend, so I watched from the security office instead." Madison flinched. "You were here during my engagement party." "I'm always here for major events," I said. "Quality control. Also, I wanted to see you happy even if it had to be from a distance." The admission hung between us as we approached the Windsor room where Dad's celebration continued. Through the etched glass doors I could hear laughter and conversation, normal sounds of a family gathering unaware their world was about to shift. Marcus stepped ahead to open the door, but I caught his arm. "Give me a moment." I turned to face my family. Mother, rigid with confusion. Madison, defensive. Nathan, thoughtful. Grace, analytical. Aunt Patricia, calculating. Uncle Robert, barely upright. "Before we go in, I need you to understand something. Dad doesn't know. I've never told him about the hotels, about Arthur, about any of it. He still thinks I'm just his daughter who works at the library." "Why?" Mother demanded. "Why would you keep this from your own father?" "Because he's the only one who never made me feel like a failure," I said simply. "He called after the bankruptcy not to lecture or criticize, but to ask if I was eating enough. He sent me grocery cards, not advice about better career choices. When everyone else saw disappointment, he still saw his daughter." Nathan's face crumpled slightly. "We really screwed up, didn't we?" "That's a conversation for later," I said. "Right now, let's just celebrate Dad." Marcus opened the door, and we entered to find the private dining room in full swing. Dad sat at the head of the table, his face bright with pleasure, as he listened to one of Uncle Robert's stories. The room itself was intimate, but elegant. Warm woods, soft lighting, fresh flowers on every surface. I'd personally overseen the setup that morning. "There they are," Dad exclaimed, spotting us. Then his eyes found me and his whole face transformed. "Loretta, you made it after all." He started to rise, but I quickly moved to him, wrapping my arms around his still strong shoulders. "Happy birthday, Dad. Sorry I'm late." "Nonsense. You're here now." He pulled back to look at me, his eyes crinkling. "Though you look tired, sweetheart. The library working you too hard." Before I could answer, Madison interjected. "Dad, we need to tell you something about Loretta." "Madison?" I warned, but she bulldozed forward. "She owns this place, Dad, the whole hotel, the whole chain. She's been lying to us for years." The room fell silent. Dad's cousins, who'd been chatting over wine, turned to stare. Emma, Nathan's wife, dropped her fork. Even the server Carlos, who'd been pouring water, froze mid-motion. Dad looked from Madison to me, confusion clear on his face. "Owns the hotel. What's she talking about, Loretta?" I shot Madison a look that could have melted steel, then gently took Dad's hand. "It's true, Dad. I inherited the Sterling Hotels from Arthur Sterling. But I never lied to you. I just didn't know how to tell you." "Arthur Sterling," Dad repeated. "The hotel magnate who died a few years back. The news said he left everything to someone outside the family. That was you." I nodded, watching his face carefully. "I met him when I was working as a cleaner here after the bakery failed. He became my mentor then, like a second father. When he died, he left me his hotels." Dad was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then unexpectedly, he smiled. "Did he ever try your grandmother's lemon cupcakes?" The question was so perfectly Dad that tears pricked my eyes. "Yes, He said they had too much sugar, that Grandma Rose would have used honey. He was right, Dad said simply. She always did prefer honey. He squeezed my hand. Sit down, sweetheart. Tell me about him. Tell me about all of it. But Madison wasn't done. Dad, you don't understand. She's been pretending to be poor while she's worth millions. She let us exclude her mock, treat her like the family disappointment. I finished for her. Yes, I did, because I wanted to know if any of you could love me without the money. Dad did. The rest of you failed that test. The words landed like a slap. Mother sank into a chair, her face pale. Nathan rubbed his face with both hands. Grace had gone very still, her analytical mind, no doubt, reviewing every interaction through this new lens. It was then that the door opened again and two people entered who I hadn't expected, but perhaps should have. James Sterling had apparently not accepted his banishment quietly. He'd returned this time with someone else, an elderly woman I recognized from Arthur's photographs. Evelyn, I said, standing quickly. Mrs. Sterling. Arthur's ex-wife stood in the doorway, 90 years old but still formidable in her designer suit and pearls. She studied me with sharp eyes that reminded me painfully of Arthur's. So you're the girl, she said finally, the one who stole my children's inheritance. Mother, don't. James started, but she silenced him with a gesture. I'll speak to whomever I please, she declared. Then to everyone's shock, she smiled. I came to thank you, dear. The room collectively held its breath. Thank me, I managed. For being there when none of us were, Evelyn Sterling said simply, for giving Arthur what his family couldn't genuine care without price tags attached. She moved into the room with surprising grace for her age. I divorced him 40 years ago because he loved his hotels more than people. Turns out I was wrong. He loved people. His children just taught him that love came with invoices. James's face went purple. Mother! Oh, hush, she told him. You haven't visited my care facility in 6 months. The only reason you're here tonight is because you heard rumors about the will being challenged again. She turned back to me. It can't be, dear. I made sure of that myself. What Arthur gave you was earned, not stolen. You supported the will, I asked, stunned. Quietly behind the scenes, she confirmed. My children didn't need to know their mother funded the legal team that defended you. They'd already disappointed me enough. She looked around the room, taking in my frozen family. Your relatives, I assume they seem shocked. Arthur mentioned you had family troubles, said you worked 3 jobs rather than ask them for help. Pride or wisdom, he couldn't decide. Both, Dad said suddenly. My daughter has both in spades. He stood moving to my side. I don't care about hotels or millions or any of it. I care that you're happy. Are you happy, Loretta? It was such a simple question, but it cut through everything, the drama, the revelations, the years of secrets. Yes, Dad. For the first time since the bakery closed, I'm genuinely happy. Then that's all that matters. He looked around the table at the rest of the family. And if any of you have a problem with my daughter's success, you can leave now. This is my birthday, and I won't have anyone here who can't be happy for Loretta. The challenge was clear. Choose sides, now support me or leave. Mother was the first to speak. I need some time to process this. Process it elsewhere, Dad said firmly. You've had 5 years to support your daughter. If you need more time to decide whether her success changes that you're not welcome at my table. I'd never seen Dad like this, protective, fierce, unwilling to compromise. It made my throat tight with emotion. Madison turned to her husband. Bradley, say something. Bradley cleared his throat. Congratulations, Loretta. Building on the Sterling legacy while maintaining your library job and supporting charitable causes, it's admirable. You're taking her side, Madison hissed. I'm taking the side of good business sense, Bradley replied evenly. Your sister accomplished something remarkable. The least we can do is acknowledge it. One by one, family members had to declare themselves. Some, like Nathan and Grace, offered tentative congratulations tinged with shame. Others, like Aunt Patricia, suddenly discovered pressing engagements elsewhere. Uncle Robert, drunkenly honest as always, raised his glass in a toast to the richest librarian in Seattle. Through it all, Evelyn Sterling watched with those sharp eyes. When the dust settled and only those willing to accept the new reality remained, she approached me again. "Arthur kept journals," she said quietly. "Wrote about you often in his final years. Would you like them? I've been saving them for the right moment." "I'd be honored," I said, my voice thick. She nodded, then did something unexpected. She kissed my cheek. "Take care of his legacy, dear. But more importantly, take care of yourself. Don't let it consume you the way it did him." As she left, supported by James, who looked defeated rather than angry now, I realized the evening had become something I hadn't planned. Not revenge or vindication, but a reckoning. The truth was, out secrets scattered like cards on the table, and everyone had to decide what to do with them. Dad raised his champagne glass. "To my daughter Loretta," he said firmly. Who inherited more than hotels, she inherited the grace to succeed without stepping on others to get there. Some glasses rose immediately. Others followed slowly. Madison's remained on the table until Bradley lifted it for her. To Loretta came the chorus, some voices stronger than others. I sipped my champagne, tasting victory and sadness in equal measure. The truth hadn't set everyone free, but at least now we were all dealing with reality instead of assumptions. Outside the private dining room windows, Seattle sparkled in the night. Below, the Sterling Grand continued its elegant business, unaware that in one small room, a family was trying to rebuild itself around a new understanding of success-failure and the space between. As the champagne toast settled into uncomfortable silence, James Sterling reappeared in the doorway one final time. His earlier rage had transformed into something more complex, resignation mixed with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Behind him, Evelyn waited with that same knowing expression. "Before we go," James said stiffly, "I owe you something." The room tensed. Marcus stepped closer to me instinctively, but I held up a hand. James had never been physically violent, just verbally vicious, and something in his posture suggested defeat rather than attack. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through it before holding it out to me. 3 months ago, my CFO sent me this analysis. I never responded to it. I took the phone, scanning the document. It was a comprehensive review of Sterling Hotel's performance under my leadership versus the final years of Arthur's management. The numbers made my breath catch. Occupancy up 23%. Revenue per available room increased by 31%. Employee satisfaction scores at historic highs. New property acquisitions strategically positioned in emerging markets. My father was brilliant. James continued, his voice rough. But he was also tired. The last 5 years of his life, the hotels were coasting, maintaining, not growing. Under your leadership, he gestured at the phone. Every metric has improved. Every single one. Madison peered over my shoulder at the screen. "I don't understand these numbers." "They mean," Bradley said quietly, having moved to look as well, "that Loretta hasn't just maintained Arthur Sterling's legacy. She's exceeded it. These performance indicators are exceptional, especially in the current market." James took his phone back, pocketing it with shaking hands. "I spent 3 years trying to prove you were incompetent, that you'd destroy everything my father built. Instead, you've made it worth nearly double what it was when he died." "It was never about the money," I said. "I know that now," James admitted, "which is probably why you succeeded where I would have failed." He straightened his tie, a gesture so like his father it made my chest ache. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not that evolved. But I am acknowledging that my father chose well, even if I'll never understand why he didn't choose me." Evelyn touched his arm gently. "Because you would have sold it all within a year to fund your hedge fund ventures. We both know it's true." James didn't deny it. With a final nod to me, he let his mother out, this time for good. The door closed behind them with a soft click that felt like the end of a chapter. "Well," Dad said into the silence, "that was unexpected." He looked around the table. Should we order dinner? I'd like to hear more about how my daughter became a hotel mogul while I wasn't paying attention. Actually, I said, standing, let me show you something first. I moved to the wall panel that controlled the room's presentation system. Most guests didn't know it existed, but I'd had all the private dining rooms equipped with state-of-the-art technology for business meetings. A few taps brought up the display screen, and I pulled out my phone to cast the prepared presentation I'd never thought I'd share with my family. This is the Arthur Sterling Foundation. I began as images filled the screen. Started with $50 million in seed funding, now worth over $200 million thanks to strategic investments. Last year alone, we helped 312 small business owners recover from bankruptcy. The screen showed faces, men and women of all ages and backgrounds, standing in front of reopened shops, restaurants, service businesses. Their smiles were genuine, grateful, proud. This is Maria Gonzalez. I continued highlighting one image. Single mother of 3 lost her food truck business during COVID. We provided funding for a new truck and business mentorship. She now owns 3 trucks and employs 15 people. Grace leaned forward, genuinely interested. What's the success rate? How many businesses survive after your intervention? 73% are still operational after 3 years, I replied. Compare that to the standard 20% survival rate for businesses recovering from bankruptcy. What makes the difference? Nathan asked. Mentorship, I said simply. Money alone doesn't save a failing business. They need guidance connections, someone who believes in them when everyone else has written them off, the way Arthur believed in me. The next slide showed a familiar building. This is the Seattle Skills Center, opened last year. We train unemployed and underemployed individuals for careers in hospitality, housekeeping, maintenance, culinary arts, hotel management. Free training, paid internships, and guaranteed job interviews within the Sterling Hotels network. You created jobs programs, Mother asked, her voice small. I created opportunity programs, I corrected. The jobs were already there. I just made sure people who looked like I did 5 years ago, desperate, overlooked, written off, had a chance to fill them. Dad was smiling now, that proud father smile I'd seen when Nathan graduated medical school or when Madison got married. But this time, it was for me. The next image made Madison gasp. It was her husband Bradley's pharmaceutical company's headquarters. 6 months ago, I said carefully, Morrison Pharmaceuticals was facing a hostile takeover from Titan Corp. You were going to lose everything: Bradley's position, the employee pension fund, the research division developing the affordable insulin. Bradley's face had gone pale. That was you, the anonymous investor who blocked the takeover. I nodded. $40 million investment through a shell company, enough to give you controlling interest again. I couldn't let 800 people lose their jobs because Titan wanted to strip the company for parts. Madison stared at me, then at Bradley, then back at me. You saved Bradley's company. Why, I've been nothing but horrible to you. Because you're my sister, I said simply, and because those employees didn't deserve to suffer for corporate greed. The same reason I quietly paid off Nathan's medical school loans last year. Nathan's water glass hit the table with a thunk. That was you. The loan servicer said it was an administrative correction. I might have suggested they phrase it that way. I admitted. You were killing yourself working extra shifts to make payments. Patients need doctors who aren't exhausted from financial stress. Grace held up her phone, showing a banking app. The angel investment in my startup last year. Tech Angel LLC. That was you too, wasn't it? Guilty, I confirmed. Your AI healthcare platform has the potential to save lives. It deserved funding without strings attached. The room had gone very quiet. Mother's hands trembled as she set down her champagne flute. You've been helping us all along. Even when you treated me like I was invisible, I finished. Yes, because that's what family does, or what it should do. But we didn't, Madison whispered. We excluded you. Mocked you, made you feel worthless. Tears had started streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. And you still saved Bradley's company. You still protected us. I protected 800 employees and their families, I clarified. The fact that it helped you was a bonus. Dad stood moving around the table to pull me into a fierce hug. My brilliant, generous daughter. I'm so proud of you I could burst. There's more, I said against his shoulder. One more thing. I pulled back, returning to the presentation. The final slide showed architectural renderings of a beautiful building, classic Seattle craftsman style with modern touches. The Rose Bennett Memorial Culinary Institute, breaking ground next month on Capitol Hill. Full scholarship program for aspiring bakers and pastry chefs from low-income backgrounds. Grandma Rose. Mother breathed. You named it after your grandmother. Our grandmother, I corrected. The one whose recipes I supposedly wasted on a failed bakery. Turns out they weren't wasted, they were just waiting for the right moment. Will you teach there? Grace asked. Guest lectures, I confirmed, along with some of the best pastry chefs in the world. We've already received 400 applications for the first class of 20 students. Nathan cleared his throat. Loretta, I need to say something. When your bakery failed, I told you that some people aren't meant to be entrepreneurs, that maybe you should accept your limitations and find a steady job. He met my eyes, his own filled with shame. I was an arrogant ass who mistook a setback for a life sentence. I'm sorry, deeply, profoundly sorry. We all are, Grace added quietly. We saw you struggling, and instead of helping, we distanced ourselves, like poverty might be contagious. We failed you as a family. Mother had been silent, but now she stood moving toward me with uncertain steps. Can you forgive us? Not because you should, but because I want the chance to know my daughter, the real one, the one who builds empires while stamping library books, the one who saves her sister's husband's company while being blocked from entering her own hotel, the one who still cries over Grandma Rose's recipes, Dad added softly, just like she did when she was 7 and trying to get the frosting just right. I looked around the table at my family, some shamefaced, some tearful, all finally seeing me for who I was, rather than who they'd assumed I must be. Forgiveness isn't instant, I said carefully. Trust has to be rebuilt, but I'm willing to try if you are. Just don't expect the Bank of Loretta to be open. This was about protecting people, not enabling family members who suddenly remember I exist. We don't want your money, Nathan said firmly. We want our sister back, the one we stupidly threw away. Madison nodded, mascara streaming. I want to know how you did it. How you went from bankruptcy to billions. How you stayed kind when we were cruel. How you still thought of us when we'd forgotten you existed. It's not billions, I corrected with a small smile. Let's not get carried away. But it could be, Bradley said thoughtfully. With your business acumen and expansion strategy, Sterling Hotels could easily triple in value within a decade. Maybe, I agreed. But that's not the goal. The goal is to create something Arthur would be proud of, something that helps people the way he helped me, something built on more than profit margins. Something built on family values, Dad said firmly, the real ones, loyalty, support, unconditional love, the things we forgot but you never did. The server Carlos, who'd been standing forgotten in the corner, cleared his throat. Should I begin the dinner service, Miss Sterling? I looked around the table one more time. My family flawed, sometimes cruel, but still mine. Yes, Carlos, and please tell Chef Raymond we'll be doing the full tasting menu. This is a celebration after all. As Carlos left to relay the message, Grace raised her refilled champagne glass. To second chances, and to the sister who gave them to us even when we didn't deserve them. This time every glass rose, even Madison's. To Loretta, they chorused. But I was already thinking ahead. The Arthur Sterling Foundation board meeting next week, the new hotel opening in Portland, the scholarship recipients to select, the library reading program I was sponsoring. The empire I'd inherited had become something larger, a vehicle for the kind of change Arthur had believed possible. Tell us everything, Mother said as the first course arrived. Start from the beginning. That night in the bathroom when you met Arthur. We want to hear it all." So I did. Over perfectly seared scallops and expertly paired wines, I told them about the old man in silk pajamas who'd changed my life with tea and wisdom, about the lessons learned between midnight and dawn, about the empire built on kindness rather than conquest. And for the first time in 5 years, it felt like I had a family again. Not perfect, not without scars, but willing to try. Arthur would have approved. Grandma Rose would have baked a cake. And Dad just held my hand and smiled, finally seeing all of his daughter instead of just the parts that fit his expectations. As the evening progressed and course after course of Chef Raymond's exquisite menu arrived, the atmosphere in the private dining room shifted from tense revelation to something more tentative, like a family learning to breathe again after holding their breath for years. Dad hadn't let go of my hand except when absolutely necessary for eating, and even then he kept glancing at me as if I might disappear. "Tell me about the library," he said suddenly between the fish course and the meat. "You kept working there through everything. Why?" I smiled, thinking of the quiet haven that had been my anchor through the storm of litigation and corporate responsibility. "Remember when you used to take me there as a kid, every Saturday morning? You'd check out the maximum number of books," he recalled, his eyes warming. 20 at a time. I'd carry half of them because you couldn't see over the stack. "Mrs. Chen still works there," I continued. "She's 78 now, still remembers every patron's name, still recommends the perfect book. When I applied for the job, she hired me on the spot. Said anyone who read that voraciously as a child understood the sacred duty of connecting people with stories." "But surely with the hotels," Mother began, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, I'm doing it again, aren't I? Measuring everything by money." "The library pays $28,000 a year," I said. "I donate my entire salary back to their programming fund, but I show up 3 days a week because Tommy Martinez is 8 years old and dyslexic, and he trusts me to find him books he can actually read, because Jennifer Huang is 92 and legally blind, and I'm the only one who knows she likes her audiobook mysteries without too much gore." Grace nodded slowly. "It keeps you grounded, connected to the community in a way the hotels can't." "It reminds me that success isn't about what you own," I agreed. "It's about what you give. Arthur taught me that, but the library lets me live it." Dad squeezed my hand. "You know what this reminds me of when you were 10 and saved your allowance for 6 months to buy that fancy mixer for your grandmother? You could have bought toys, clothes, anything, but you wanted her to have an easier time with her arthritis." She cried, I remembered. Happy tears. She used that mixer until the day she died. "And then you inherited it," Dad continued. "Used it in your bakery. I saw it in the auction listing." His voice roughened. "I wanted to buy it back for you, but your mother thought it would enable my delusions," Mother finished quietly. "I told him you needed to accept your failure and move on. I was so wrong." Madison had been unusually quiet, but now she spoke up. "The auction. I went to it. Not to buy anything, just to, I don't know, gloat maybe I'm not proud of it. But I saw you there, Loretta, standing in the back watching strangers buy pieces of your dream. You looked so broken." "I was broken," I admitted. That was 3 days before I met Arthur. 3 days before everything changed. "But you didn't know that then," Nathan pointed out. "You thought it was the end. How did you keep going?" I thought about those dark days, the weight of failure crushing my chest, the shame of bankruptcy burning in my veins. Dad called me that night, after the auction. "Do you remember, Dad?" His eyes misted. "You sounded so lost. I was worried. I was afraid you might do something drastic. You told me about the time you got laid off from Boeing." I continued. "How you felt like a failure, unable to provide for your family. How you considered giving up. But then you remembered that we needed you, not your paycheck. We needed our father. You needed your daughter," Dad said softly. "Success or failure, rich or poor. I just needed my little girl to be okay. That call saved me, I told him. Reminded me that I was more than my mistakes. 3 days later, when I met Arthur crying on his bathroom floor, I remembered your words. That's why I could accept his help, because you'd already shown me that accepting help wasn't weakness. The meat course arrived perfectly prepared Wagyu beef that probably cost more than most people's car payments. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I'd been surviving on expired grocery store food. Now I owned the restaurant serving this meal. I have a confession, Dad said suddenly. I knew something was different about you. Not the hotels specifically, but something. You carried yourself differently, spoke with more confidence, and when you'd take me to lunch, you never flinched at prices anymore. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because you'd tell me when you were ready, he said simply, just like you didn't pressure me to retire when the doctor recommended it. We respect each other's journeys. The doctor recommended retirement. Nathan's head snapped up. When what's wrong? Dad waved him off. Minor heart issues, stress-related. Nothing that can't be managed with medication and lifestyle changes. When did this happen? Mother demanded. Why wasn't I told? Because you would have fussed and worried and made it about you, Dad said with uncharacteristic bluntness. Loretta found out because she actually visits. She's the one who found me the cardiac specialist. Best in the city somehow got me an appointment within a week. Dr. Morrison at Swedish Medical, I confirmed. We donate to their cardiac wing. They were happy to accommodate. Of course you do, Madison muttered, but there was something like wonder in her voice rather than resentment. Dad reached into his jacket, then pulling out a wrapped box I hadn't noticed him carrying. I have something for you, Loretta. I've been carrying it around for months, waiting for the right moment. I took the box, carefully unwrapping it. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was my grandmother's recipe box, the one I thought had been sold at the bakery auction. The wooden surface was polished to a warm glow, the brass hinges gleaming. Dad, I breathed. I went to the auction, he admitted. Bought it back along with her mixer and a few other things. They're in my garage. I thought someday you might want to try again and you'd need them. I opened the box, finding all the familiar recipe cards in Grandma Rose's careful handwriting. Lemon cupcakes, apple turnovers, the famous Christmas cookies that took 3 days to make properly. And there in the back, a new card in Dad's handwriting. Read it, he urged. Through tears, I read aloud, Recipe for Success. One daughter who never gives up. Generous helping of determination, a father's endless pride, mix with love, bake through adversity, serve with hope, yields one amazing woman who happens to own hotels but will always be my little baker girl. The table had gone blurry through my tears. I stood moving around to embrace Dad properly. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Always, he whispered into my hair. That's what fathers do. When I returned to my seat, Nathan cleared his throat. I have something to say. Loretta, when you needed us most, we failed you. When you succeeded despite us, you still protected us. You paid my loans, saved Madison's husband's company, invested in Grace's startup. You gave us grace we didn't earn. That ends now, Madison interjected firmly. Not the grace, we'll probably need more of that, but the taking without giving, the assuming without asking, the judging without understanding. Grace nodded. We want to earn our place in your life again, not as beneficiaries of your success, but as the siblings who should have been there from the beginning. Mother had been crying quietly, but now she spoke. I was so afraid of having a failure for a daughter that I failed as a mother. I measured worth by achievements and possessions instead of character. You succeeded in spite of my parenting, not because of it. We all make mistakes, I said carefully. The question is what we do after we recognize them. Then let me start, Mother said, standing with surprising dignity. Loretta Ann Bennett Sterling, I am profoundly sorry for the neglect, the dismissal, the cruel assumptions, for teaching your siblings to value the wrong things, for being the kind of mother who made you feel you had to hide your success rather than share it. Can you forgive me? The formal apology, so unlike Mother's usual style, showed how deeply the evening had affected her. I stood, too, facing the woman who'd given me life, but not much else for the past 5 years. "I forgive you," I said slowly, "but forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just gives us a chance to write a different future." She nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Then I'd like to start writing, if you'll let me." "We all would," Nathan added. "No more assumptions, no more judgments, just family flawed but trying." Dad raised his water glass he'd switched from champagne after the second toast. "To new beginnings, and to the daughter who taught us that success without family is just expensive loneliness, but family without respect is just shared disappointment." To balance, I offered raising my own glass, between success and humility, ambition and compassion, honesty and kindness. "To Grandma Rose," Madison added unexpectedly, who would have kicked all our asses for how we treated her granddaughter. That broke the remaining tension. We laughed, remembering the formidable woman who'd raised Mother with an iron fist in a velvet glove. She would indeed have had words, probably while wielding a rolling pin, for how the family had fractured. As dessert arrived, Chef Raymond's spectacular take on Grandma Rose's lemon cupcakes, which he'd perfected after I'd shared the recipe, Dad pulled out his phone. "Before we go any further, I'm calling the others. Your cousins, aunts, uncles. Everyone needs to hear this from us, not through gossip." "Dad, no," I protested. "This is your birthday dinner. And the best gift I could receive is my family being whole again," he said firmly. "Besides, most of them are probably still at the bar downstairs. Patricia never could resist an open tab." True to his prediction, within minutes, various family members began trickling in. Aunt Patricia looked wary. Uncle Robert had sobered up somewhat, and my various cousins appeared curious about the summons. Dad stood at the head of the table, every inch the patriarch. "I have an announcement. My daughter Loretta owns this hotel. The entire Sterling Hotel chain, in fact. She's been successful beyond our wildest dreams, while we've been treating her like a failure. That stops now." The reactions were predictable: shock calculation, sudden warmth where there had been dismissal. But Dad wasn't finished. "Anyone who suddenly wants to be close to Loretta because of her money can leave now," he continued. "She's already saved several of your businesses without asking for thanks. She's shown more grace than this family deserved. If you can't see her value beyond her bank account, you're not welcome here." Cousin Bethany, who'd mocked me outside, was the first to speak. I owe you an apology, Loretta. Not because of the hotels, but because I was cruel. We were friends as kids, and I let social climbing turn me into someone Grandma Rose would be ashamed of." One by one, they had to confront their behavior. Some apologized sincerely. Others remained silent, unable to bridge the gap between their assumptions and reality. But the truth was out, spreading through the family like wildfire. "One more thing," I said when the confessions and apologies wound down. "The Sterling name. I took it partly for legal reasons, but also to honor Arthur. I'm not giving it up, but I'm not abandoning Bennett either. In all family matters, I'm Loretta Bennett. In business, I'm Loretta Sterling. Both parts of me, both families that shaped who I became." Dad smiled. "My daughter, the diplomat. Grandma Rose would be proud." As the evening wound down with family members slowly departing with much to think about, Dad pulled me aside. "The box," he said quietly. "There's something else in there, under the recipes." I looked again, finding an envelope beneath the recipe cards. Inside was a check not large by my current standards, but I recognized the amount. It was every penny of the loan I'd tried to get from the family for the bakery, the loan they'd all refused. "I've been saving," Dad explained, "since the day you had to close, putting aside what I could have given you then. I know it's too late and you don't need it now, but—" "It's perfect," I interrupted, hugging him fiercely. "I'll use it for the first scholarship at the Culinary Institute, the Thomas Bennett Memorial Scholarship. How's that sound?" "I'm not dead yet," he protested, but his eyes were bright with pleasure. "No," I agreed. "You're very much alive, and finally so am I, the real me, not the version anyone else expected. As we prepared to leave the private dining room, I looked back at the table where so much had been revealed. Tomorrow there would be questions, adjustments, probably more apologies, and revelations. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, I'd had dinner with my family as myself, successful, generous, flawed, and real. "Hey," Madison said, catching my arm as we walked out, "that bakery, the one that failed, what was your biggest seller?" "Grandma Rose's lemon cupcakes," I replied. "Why?" She smiled, and for a moment I saw my little sister again, not the society wife. "Think Chef Raymond would teach me to make them. I'd like to learn something real for once." "I'll teach you myself," I offered. "Sunday mornings. The Culinary Institute has a practice kitchen. Bring Grace and Nathan. We'll make it a family thing." "Family," she repeated softly. "I like the sound of that. The real kind this time." As we emerged into the hotel lobby, my domain disguised as neutral territory, I realized the evening had given me something I hadn't dared hope for. Not just acknowledgement of my success, but the possibility of genuine reconciliation. It wouldn't be easy. Trust once broken took time to rebuild. But like a failed bakery that led to an empire, sometimes the best things rose from the ashes of what came before. Walking beside my father, surrounded by family who finally saw me clearly, I thought Arthur would have approved, not of the wealth or the hotels, but of the harder accomplishment turning revelation into reconciliation, success into service, and a family's blindness into a chance for better sight. The valet brought Dad's car around. I'd quietly instructed Timothy to comp all the parking fees, and as I helped him in, he squeezed my hand one more time. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said. "Sorry it got so dramatic." "Best birthday I've ever had," he replied firmly. "The day I got my daughter back. All of her." As their cars pulled away into the Seattle night, I stood in front of my hotel, no longer hiding who I was. Marcus appeared at my elbow, ever vigilant. "How do you feel, boss?" I considered the question. Like I finally put down a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. Also exhausted. Family revelations are harder than board meetings. But worth it. I thought of Dad's face when he gave me the recipe box of Madison asking to learn baking, of Grace's genuine interest in the foundation of Nathan's heartfelt apology. "Yeah," I said softly, "worth it." Tomorrow would bring new challenges running an empire while rebuilding family relationships, balancing public success with private healing. But tonight, I was just Loretta Bennett Sterling daughter and sister Baker and businesswoman failure and success story all rolled into one. And for the first time in 5 years, that felt like exactly who I was supposed to be. The next morning arrived with Seattle's typical January drizzle, but my phone had been buzzing since 5 a.m. Word travels fast in families, and by dawn, every Bennett relative from here to Boston had heard some version of the previous night's revelations. I sat in my home office, not the penthouse Arthur had left me, but my modest 2-bedroom apartment that I'd never felt the need to upgrade, scrolling through messages that ranged from congratulatory to calculating. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Through the security camera, I saw Madison standing in the rain, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. No designer outfit, no flawless makeup, just my sister in yoga pants and a University of Washington sweatshirt I recognized from our college days. "I couldn't sleep," she said when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" I led her to the kitchen, putting on coffee while she sat at my small dining table, fingers tracing the wood grain nervously. The silence stretched between us, years of distance condensed into awkward feet of space. "Bradley left this morning," she said finally. "Not permanently. He said he needed time to think about who he married versus who I've become." "I'm sorry," I said, setting a mug in front of her. "I never meant for the revelation to affect your marriage." Madison laughed bitterly. "It's not about the money, Loretta. It's about the person I showed him I was. The woman who blocked her own sister from entering a building she owned. The wife who's been so focused on appearances that she never noticed her husband's company was failing until a sister she'd dismissed saved it. People make mistakes." "For 5 years," Madison interrupted. 5 years of cruel comments, exclusions, little digs about your failures. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. And last night, Bradley finally saw it clearly. She pulled out her phone, showing me a text conversation. Bradley's messages were measured but devastating. I fell in love with someone I thought had depth beneath the designer surface. Last night showed me I was wrong. You watched your sister suffer and enjoyed it. I need to reconsider who I'm building a life with. He'll come back, I offered, once the shock wears off. Maybe he shouldn't, Madison said quietly. Maybe I need to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for everyone else. She looked up at me, tears threatening her carefully waterproofed mascara. How did you do it? How did you become someone Arthur Sterling wanted to leave everything to someone who saves companies and builds foundations while I was buying handbags that cost more than most people's rent? I failed, I said simply. Completely, publicly, humiliatingly. When you have nothing left to lose, you finally see what actually matters. Then I guess I'm failing now, she whispered. My marriage, my sense of self, my understanding of family, it's all crumbling. Or transforming, I suggested. Destruction and construction can look the same in the middle stages. Before Madison could respond, my phone rang. Grace's name appeared on the screen and I put her on speaker with Madison's permission. Nathan's at Mom's, Grace said without preamble. He's been there since 6 a.m. going through photo albums. Mom called me crying. Apparently, he's been listing every time they failed you starting from your college graduation. Madison and I exchanged glances. Nathan, the golden child, the successful surgeon, having his own reckoning. Should we go over there? I asked. I'm heading there now, Grace said. Fair warning, Aunt Patricia is there too. She's alternating between trying to get Mom to demand money from you and insisting this is all some elaborate tax scheme. Of course she is, Madison muttered. God forbid someone succeed without an ulterior motive. We agreed to meet at our childhood home, the sprawling Bellevue house, where our family's dynamics had been established and apparently were now being demolished. Madison rode with me the first time we'd been alone in a car together since her wedding day. Remember when we used to drive to school together? She asked softly. Before I got too cool to be seen with my older sister. You were never too cool, I corrected. You were just trying to find your place. We all were. Your place turned out to be at the top of a hotel empire, she said. Mine turned out to be, what trophy wife to a pharmaceutical executive, the mean girl who never grew out of it. That's not all you are, I said firmly. Remember the Madison who organized fundraisers for the Children's Hospital, who spent summers teaching swim lessons to underprivileged kids? She's still in there. Is she? Madison stared out the window at the passing Seattle suburbs. Or did I bury her under Louis Vuitton and social climbing? We pulled into the driveway of our childhood home, the circular drive now hosting several cars. Through the large front windows, I could see figures moving, family gathering for another confrontation or reconciliation. I wasn't sure which. Inside, we found Nathan sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums. Mother sat on the couch, tissues clutched in her hand, while Aunt Patricia paced behind her, like a designer-clad vulture. Grace stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, watching it all with her analyst's eye. There she is, Aunt Patricia announced as we entered. The secret millionaire. I hope you're prepared to make this right, Loretta. The family has supported you. No, Nathan said firmly, not looking up from a photo. No, we didn't. That's the whole point. He held up the picture, my college graduation, all of us smiling. Look at this. Loretta graduated summa cum laude with a business degree. Do any of you remember what we talked about at her celebration dinner? Silence greeted the question. Madison's upcoming wedding, he continued. My medical school applications, Grace's internship. Loretta sat there for 2 hours at her own graduation dinner while we planned everyone else's future. He looked at me, then eyes red-rimmed. I don't even remember if we said congratulations. You did, I said quietly, right before dessert. You said, "Good job, sis," and then asked if I could help you move the following weekend. "And you did," he said. "You always did. Helped me move, helped Madison plan her wedding, helped Grace with her coding projects. When did we stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as—" What the family helper? The one who wasn't quite successful enough to matter? "When the bakery failed," Mother said softly, "that's when everything changed. I was so ashamed. My friends kept asking about it and I didn't know what to say. It was easier to distance ourselves than admit my daughter had failed." "Your daughter didn't fail," Grace interjected. "She learned. The difference between failure and education is what you do next. Loretta took her education and built an empire. We took our arrogance and built walls." Aunt Patricia scoffed. "This is all very touching, but the fact remains that Loretta has been hiding massive wealth while the family struggled." "Which family struggled?" I asked, cutting her off. "Nathan makes $400,000 a year. Madison married into pharmaceutical money. Grace's startup is valued at $10 million. Mother lives in a $5 million house. Which part of the family was struggling exactly?" "The perception," Patricia said, as if that explained everything. "Do you know how it looked when Patricia Weatherby asked about you at the club? When I had to admit my niece worked at a library?" "Oh, the horror," Madison said dryly. "A gainfully employed relative with a master's degree. How did you survive the shame?" Patricia turned on her, but Mother stood up, something steely entering her voice. "Enough, Patricia. You came here to gossip and scheme, not to help. Leave now." "Evelyn, you can't be serious." "Leave," Mother repeated. "My children are trying to heal something I helped break. Your greed has no place here." Patricia left in a huff, muttering about ungrateful relatives and missed opportunities. The room felt lighter without her presence, but the hard work remained. Nathan held up another photo my bakery's opening day. I stood in front of Grandma Rose's bakery, beaming with pride and possibility. 6 months later, you were bankrupt. 6 months after that, you were working 3 jobs. And what did I do? I told people my sister was finding herself, like failure was a gap year. "We all did that," Grace admitted. "Minimized it, made excuses, acted like your struggle was a choice rather than survival." Madison picked up one of the albums, flipping through pages. "Here," she said, stopping at a family Christmas photo from 3 years ago. "Everyone's there except Loretta. I remember Mom said you were working, but that wasn't true, was it?" "I wasn't invited," I confirmed. The text said, "Small family gathering this year," and suggested we could catch up after the holidays. While I posted on Instagram about how blessed I was to have family, Madison said, disgust coloring her voice. "God, I really am horrible." "You're human," I corrected. "Flawed sometimes, cruel, but human. The question is what you do now." "I want to be better," Nathan said firmly. "Not because you're successful, but because you're my sister, and I've been a terrible brother. I want to know you again, the real you, not the version I created to make myself feel superior." "Same," Grace added. "I've spent so much time analyzing everyone else's behavior that I never examine my own. Classic deflection, really." Mother had been quiet, but now she moved to sit beside Nathan on the floor, something she never would have done in her designer dress before last night. "I need to tell you all something. About why I reacted so badly to Loretta's failure." We waited the room, holding its breath. "When I was 23, before I met your father, I started a business too, a boutique clothing store. I was so certain it would succeed, so proud of my independence." She paused, lost in memory. "It failed within 8 months. My parents, your grandparents, were furious. The shame was overwhelming. They made me promise never to take such risks again, to marry well and be satisfied with security." "You never told us," Grace said softly. "Because I buried that girl," Mother continued. "Buried her under social expectations and safe choices. And when Loretta's bakery failed, all I could see was myself at 23, humiliated, judged, reduced to nothing but my failure. I couldn't bear to watch it, so I pushed her away instead of helping her through it. You projected your trauma onto me." I said, understanding flooding through me. And taught my other children to do the same, Mother added. To value safety over dreams, success over struggle, appearance over authenticity. I created the very dynamics that fractured us. So how do we fix it? Madison asked. How do we become a real family again? By doing the work, I said. Not grand gestures or sudden changes, but daily choices to be better, to show up, to see each other as people, not roles. I have a suggestion, Grace offered. Family dinner, every Sunday. Not at some fancy restaurant, but rotating between our homes. Cooking together, talking honestly, building new patterns. I can't cook, Madison admitted. I'll teach you, I said. Start with Grandma Rose's recipes. Build from there. And therapy, Nathan added firmly. Individual and maybe family. We have patterns to unlearn, and that takes professional help. Mother nodded slowly. I've been seeing someone since last night. Emergency session this morning. She says I have a lot of work to do on my relationship with failure and success. We all do, I agreed. My phone buzzed Marcus texting about an urgent hotel matter. For once I ignored it. The Empire could wait, this conversation couldn't. I need to say something. I said, standing to face my family. I forgive you, all of you. Not because what happened was okay, but because holding on to anger is too heavy. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean unlimited access to my life or resources. It means we start fresh with new boundaries and honest expectations. What kind of boundaries? Madison asked. No money talk, I said firmly. No requests for investments or loans or bailouts. If you're in my life, it's because you want a sister, not a bank. No name-dropping my hotels for special treatment. No sudden business proposals from distant relatives. And absolutely no press leaks or social media posts about the secret Eras story. Agreed, Nathan said immediately. I want my sister, not your wallet. The others nodded agreement, and I felt something shift in the room, a possibility of genuine connection that hadn't existed in years. One more thing, I added. This isn't just about me forgiving you. You need to forgive yourselves. Shame is just as toxic as anger, and I won't watch you self-destruct over past mistakes. We're all works in progress. Easier said than done, Madison murmured. Everything worth doing is, I replied. We spent the rest of the morning in that living room looking through photos and sharing memories, not to dwell on failures, but to remember when we were just siblings, before success and failure divided us. Madison found pictures from our childhood lemonade stand. Nathan discovered videos from family vacations when Dad would make us sing road trip songs. Grace pulled out report cards and school projects, evidence of 4 children who once supported each other's dreams. We can be that again, Mother said softly, holding a photo of the 4 of us children covered in flour from a baking project. Different, older, wiser, hopefully, but still family. Speaking of baking, I said, checking my watch, I have a meeting at the Culinary Institute site this afternoon. Want to come see where Grandma Rose's legacy will live on? They all said yes, immediately eager to be included in this new chapter. As we prepared to leave, Madison pulled me aside. Bradley texted, she said, showing me her phone. He's willing to work on things if I am. Says anyone who can admit their flaws that honestly deserves a second chance. What did you tell him? That I'm working on becoming someone worthy of chances, she said, starting with being a better sister. As we filed out to our cars, I caught Mother standing in the doorway of her perfect house, looking somehow smaller and more real than she had in years. Thank you, she called out, for succeeding despite us, for showing us who we could be instead of who we've been. Thank Arthur, I called back. He taught me that empires built on isolation crumble, but those built on connection endure. Then let's build something enduring, she replied, all of us together this time. The rain had stopped weak January sun breaking through the clouds. It felt like a sign not of perfect weather ahead, but of the possibility of brightness after storms. My family had work to do individually and collectively. Trust would take time. New patterns would require practice. But for the first time in 5 years, we were all facing the same direction, seeing each other clearly, and choosing to walk forward together. The Sterling empire would continue to grow, but the Bennett family, flawed human and finally honest, might just grow alongside it. The Grandma Rose Memorial Culinary Institute construction site buzzed with activity despite the Saturday afternoon timing. I'd asked the project manager to meet us there, wanting my family to see the tangible reality of what their mockery had missed, not just hotels and wealth, but purpose transformed into action. As our small convoy pulled up to the Capitol Hill location, I saw their faces change. This wasn't some vanity project or tax write-off. The architectural plans displayed on massive boards showed a state-of-the-art facility designed to train the next generation of bakers and pastry chefs. "It's beautiful," Grace said softly, studying the renderings. The design references Grandma's house, the wraparound porch, the kitchen windows. "Architecture with memory," I confirmed. "Every student who walks through those doors will know they're entering a place built on legacy." Tom Martinez, my project manager, jogged over with hard hats. "Miss Sterling, perfect timing. We're about to pour the foundation for the main kitchen. Would your family like to participate?" I glanced at my siblings and mother, all dressed in their Saturday casual clothes that still cost more than most people's formal wear. "What do you think want to get dirty for Grandma Rose?" Madison surprised me by grabbing a hard hat first. "These shoes are designer," she said, looking at her pristine boots. "But you know what, screw it. Let's do this." 20 minutes later, we stood at the edge of the foundation pit, each holding a small ceremonial shovel of concrete. Mother had tears streaming down her face as she remembered her own mother, the woman whose recipes had started everything. She used to say that good food was love made tangible, Mother said, that feeding people was the highest form of care. I forgot that when I started measuring worth by profit margins instead of purpose. "Now her recipes will teach others that same love," Nathan added. "Full circle." We poured our concrete, together 5 shovels of possibility mixed into the foundation. The construction crew applauded and Tom snapped photos, understanding this was about more than publicity. "Want to see something else?" I asked, leading them to a temporary trailer set up as an office. Inside, the walls were covered with applications, hundreds of them, each representing someone's dream of becoming a professional baker. Madison picked up one at random, reading aloud. "Maria Gonzalez, 22, first-generation American. My mother cleans offices at night so I can attend community college during the day. Baking is how we bond, sharing recipes from her childhood in Mexico with American techniques I've learned. This scholarship would mean I could pursue my passion without adding to her burden." "They're all like that," I said. "Dreams deferred by circumstance, not lack of talent or drive." "How do you choose?" Grace asked, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of hope papering the walls. "Carefully," I admitted. "Committee reviews, skills tests, essays, interviews. But ultimately, we look for what Arthur saw in me, someone who views failure as education and success as responsibility." Nathan had been quiet, studying the applications, but now he spoke. "I want to sponsor a scholarship. Full ride all 4 years. Call it the Second Chances Scholarship for students who failed before but refused to give up." "Nathan, I started remembering my boundary about money." "Not because you're rich," he interrupted. "Because I'm rich and have been hoarding it like it makes me better than everyone else. Time to put my money where my newfound conscience is." "I want to teach," Madison said suddenly. "Not baking, I need to learn that first, but business skills. How to run a bakery, manage finances, avoid the pitfalls that caught you. I have an MBA I've never used for anything but planning charity galas." Grace nodded. "I can teach technology integration, modern point-of-sale systems, online ordering, social media marketing, things that might have helped your bakery survive if you'd had support. And I'll handle the parent organization," Mother added. "These students will have families who might not understand their dreams. Someone needs to help bridge that gap." I stared at my family, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. Not just their flaws or their privilege, but their capacity for growth when given the chance. This isn't what I expected when I brought you here, I admitted. Maybe that's the point, Madison said. You've been managing our family like you manage hotels, planning for every contingency. But families aren't businesses. Sometimes they surprise you. My phone buzzed insistently the urgent hotel matter Marcus had mentioned. This time, I looked at it. The mayor had arrived early for our meeting, and there was an issue with protesters at one of our properties being converted to transitional housing. I need to handle something, I said reluctantly. But dinner tomorrow. Our first Sunday family meal. My place, Nathan offered. Emma's still at her medical conference, so no pressure. We'll order pizza and figure out how to be siblings again. I'll bring wine, Grace added. The cheap stuff so we remember we're family, not business associates. As we prepared to leave, Mother caught my arm. The protesters, is it about the transitional housing? I nodded. Some neighbors don't want formerly homeless families in their area. Property values, they claim. Take Madison, Mother suggested. She knows those people speaks their language. Maybe she can help. Madison looked surprised but nodded. I've got nothing else planned except wallowing in my moral failures. Wallowing can wait, I decided. Want to see how hotels can change lives beyond luxury. An hour later, Madison and I stood outside the Sterling Commons, our older property being renovated into supportive housing. About 30 protesters held signs, "Protect our neighborhood and no homeless here," and the particularly charming "Keep Seattle Safe." I know her, Madison said, pointing to a woman with perfectly styled hair despite the drizzle. Caroline Ashford. We were in junior league together. Want me to talk to her? What would you say? Madison straightened her shoulders. The truth. That my sister is trying to help families get back on their feet, and NIMBYism disguised as concern is just fear with better vocabulary. I watched my sister march over to the protesters' designer boots splashing through puddles. Caroline's face went through several expressions as Madison spoke surprise, indignation, uncertainty. Other protesters gathered around, and I could see Madison gesturing her sorority girl charm deployed for good instead of gossip. Marcus appeared at my elbow. Your sister's got guts. She's finding them, I corrected. We all are. The mayor arrived then, her security detail eyeing the protesters warily. Miss Sterling, I see we have a welcoming committee. Democracy in action, I said diplomatically. Shall we go inside? I want to show you the family suites. But Madison was returning Caroline Ashford in tow. The woman looked uncomfortable, but curious. Caroline has concerns about safety, Madison said smoothly. I thought you could address them directly, Loretta. I spent the next 20 minutes explaining our screening process, support services, and security measures. Caroline asked pointed questions, but they came from fear rather than malice. By the end, she was nodding slowly. My church runs a food bank, she said finally. Some of these families probably use it. I suppose it's hypocritical to feed them but not want them housed nearby. Fear of change is natural, I said. But these aren't statistics or problems, they're families who need stability to rebuild. Your neighbors, just with different stories. Caroline returned to the protesters, and whatever she said caused a heated discussion. Eventually, about half of them left signs tucked under their arms. The others remained but seemed less certain. You diffused that well, the mayor observed. My sister diffused it, I corrected. I just told the truth. Madison beamed, and I realized this was probably the first time in years she'd used her social capital for something meaningful. The tour went well, the mayor impressed by our comprehensive approach, not just housing, but counseling, job training, childcare, and community building. As she left promising municipal support, Madison and I stood in what would become the community kitchen. This is what you've been building, she said softly. Not just hotels, but hope. Hotels are the engine, I explained, but this is the purpose. Arthur taught me that wealth without service is just expensive emptiness. Like my life has been, Madison said, but without the self-pity from this morning. Expensive emptiness designer edition. But that's changing, I pointed out. You just face down your junior league friends for strangers you've never met. That's not nothing. It's a start, she agreed. Bradley texted again. He's proud of me. Says maybe there's hope for us after all. There's always hope, I said, thinking of Arthur, of second chances of families finding their way back to each other. As we drove back toward the city center, Madison asked, "The penthouse Arthur left you. Do you ever use it?" "For business meetings sometimes," I admitted. "But I can't live there. Too many memories, too much space for one person." "Maybe that's changing too," she suggested. "Maybe you don't have to be one person anymore." That evening, as I finally made it to my postponed meeting with hotel management, I found my mind wandering to tomorrow's family dinner. 5 years of distance couldn't be bridged in one day, but we'd started building. Like the foundation poured for Grandma Rose's Institute, like the families who'd find stability in transitional housing, like the empire Arthur had entrusted to a broken girl, crying on his bathroom floor. Everything meaningful started with someone taking the first difficult step. My phone lit up with a group text Grace had started, "Family dinner planning, Bennett siblings, plus Mom 2.0. Nathan, Loretta likes mushroom pizza. Madison's vegetarian when convenient. Grace is lactose intolerant. Mom pretends carbs don't exist. This is going to be interesting. Madison, I'm bringing salad and humility, lots of humility. Grace, does humble pie count as dessert? Mother, I'll bring my mother's dinner rolls. First time I've made them in 20 years. Wish me luck. Me, we make our own luck. See you tomorrow. As their responses flooded in hearts and smiley faces and promises to try, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just success or satisfaction, but belonging. The empire would continue to grow. The foundation would help more people. The hotels would generate wealth and purpose in equal measure. But tomorrow, I'd just be Loretta Bennett Sterling eating pizza with her flawed, growing, beautifully human family, and that felt like the greatest success of all. Sunday morning arrived with unusual sunshine for January in Seattle, as if the weather itself had decided to bless our attempt at family reconciliation. I stood in my kitchen making Grandma Rose's coffee cake, the one she'd always prepared for special occasions, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I'd deleted, but still recognized Patricia Sterling. "Ms. Sterling," she said when I answered, her voice carefully modulated. "I apologize for calling your private number. I wondered if we might meet, privately. There's something I need to give you." My instinct was to refuse. The Sterling siblings had caused enough pain, but something in her voice, a vulnerability I'd never heard before, made me pause. "1 hour," I said. "The coffee shop on Pine Street, public location." "Thank you," she said softly and hung up. I arrived early, choosing a corner table where I could see the entrance. Patricia entered exactly on time, but she looked different. Gone was the perfectly polished society woman. In her place stood someone who looked tired, older, real. "Thank you for meeting me." She began sitting carefully. "I know I have no right to your time." "What do you need, Patricia?" She reached into her purse, pulling out a worn leather journal. This was my father's. Not the business journals Mother mentioned. This was personal, his private thoughts from the last year of his life. She slid it across the table. "He wrote about you. A lot." My hands trembled as I opened the journal, recognizing Arthur's precise handwriting. I flipped to a random page and read, "Loretta asked today why I chose her. How do I explain that she reminds me of myself at 25, hungry, desperate, convinced the world had no place for failures, but where I had advantages, she has only determination. Where I had family money to fall back on, she has only her grandmother's recipes and a willingness to scrub toilets at 3 a.m. She doesn't know yet that those are better foundations than inherited wealth. She will." "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked, looking up at Patricia. "Because I read it," she admitted, "cover to cover, and I finally understand what we lost. Not money or hotels or inheritance. We lost our father's respect. And you didn't steal it. We threw it away." She pulled out another item, a photograph. Arthur in his hospital bed holding my hand, both of us laughing at something. I remembered that moment. He'd been telling me about the time he'd tried to make croissants and nearly burned down his first hotel kitchen. The nursing staff took this, Patricia continued. They gave it to me after he died, thinking it would comfort me to see him happy. Instead, it enraged me. This stranger making my father laugh when I hadn't seen him smile in years. You could have, I said quietly. He never stopped hoping you'd visit without an agenda. I know that now. She stood leaving both items with me. I won't contest anything anymore. James is moving to London starting fresh. I'm selling the house downsizing. Maybe learning who I am without the sterling name to trade on. It's a good name, I said. Your father made it mean something. You could too if you wanted. She smiled sadly. Maybe someday. For now I need to figure out who Patricia is when she's not defined by what she thinks she deserves. After she left, I sat reading Arthur's journal, finding entry after entry about our late-night conversations, his growing confidence in my abilities, his hope that I'd find family again someday. One passage stood out. She forgave them today, the family that abandoned her. Didn't even realize she'd done it. Mentioned her sister's wedding, said she was happy Madison found love, even if she couldn't attend. That capacity for grace despite pain, that's what will make her great. Not the business acumen I'm teaching her, but the heart that stays soft despite every reason to harden. I closed the journal, tucking it carefully into my bag. One confrontation down, but I sensed the day held more. Sure enough, my phone buzzed. Nathan, can you come by earlier? Something I need to say before everyone else arrives. I found Nathan in his backyard staring at the elaborate playhouse he'd built for future children who hadn't arrived yet. Emma's absence was palpable, their perfect home feeling hollow without her warmth. She's not at a medical conference, he said without preamble. Emma left, trial separation, says I've become someone she doesn't recognize. Nathan, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be honest. He turned to face me, and I saw tears he wasn't bothering to hide. Am I a good person, Loretta? Not a good surgeon or successful man. A good person... You're asking the wrong question, I said carefully. Good isn't fixed. It's a choice you make every day. Then I've been choosing wrong, he said flatly. Emma showed me the text messages. 5 years of family group chats where we discussed you like a problem to be managed. Jokes about your little library job and bets on when you'd ask for money. She said she was ashamed to be married to someone so cruel to his own sister. People can change, I offered. Can they? He sat on the playhouse steps looking lost. I've built my entire identity on being better than others, smarter, richer, more successful. Without that, who am I? You're my brother, I said, sitting beside him. The kid who taught me to ride a bike, who defended me from bullies in 3rd grade, who stayed up all night helping me study for the SATs. That Nathan is still in there. Is he... Nathan pulled out his phone, scrolling to old photos. Look at us. Before I became Dr. Bennett and you became the family failure, we were just siblings who loved each other. We can be again, I said. But it takes work. Emma left because she saw you choosing superiority over connection. Choose differently. How? Start small. Today be present at dinner without mentioning your job once. Tomorrow call Emma and admit you need help becoming someone worth coming back to. Next week actually listen when people talk instead of waiting for your turn to impress them. You make it sound simple. Simple isn't easy, I corrected. I spent years rebuilding myself after the bakery failed. You're just starting your renovation project. Grace arrived then earlier than expected. She looked between us, reading the emotional temperature immediately. Emma, she guessed. Nathan nodded. Apparently, successful assholes still end up alone. Only if they stay assholes, Grace said pragmatically. The successful part is negotiable. She sat on his other side. Want to know why my last relationship ended? We waited. Because I analyzed everything instead of feeling anything, she admitted. Turned every conversation into data points. optimized our date nights for efficiency, created spreadsheets for household tasks. He said loving me was like being debugged constantly. Ouch, Nathan muttered. Yeah, Grace agreed. Turns out people aren't code to be perfected, including ourselves. Madison's arrival completed our sibling circle. She carried bags of groceries despite our pizza plans, nervous energy radiating from her. Bradley's coming, she announced, to dinner. He says he wants to meet the real Bennett family, not the performance we've been doing. Brave man, I commented. Brave or stupid, Madison agreed. But he's trying. We talked all night. Really talked, not the surface stuff we've been doing for years. Turns out I married a man I never bothered to actually know because I was too busy showing him off. And Grace prompted. And he's kind of amazing, Madison said softly. Volunteers at a clinic in low-income neighborhoods. Reads poetry, cried during Coco. I've been married to this wonderful human while performing trophy wife so hard I never noticed. Mother arrived last carrying a covered basket that smelled like heaven. I burned the first 2 batches, she confessed. Forgot how temperamental her recipe was. But the 3rd time, she unveiled perfect golden dinner rolls, Grandma Rose's signature creation. You did it, I breathed genuine pride in my voice. Small victories, Mother said, but she was smiling. Now, shall we attempt this family dinner without anyone drawing blood? What followed was the most awkward, honest, painful, and ultimately healing dinner we'd had in years. Nathan confessed his fears about Emma never coming back. Madison admitted she'd been texting our cousins all week, trying to control the narrative about my revelation. Grace shared her struggle with human connection beyond data analysis. Mother revealed she'd been seeing a therapist twice a week, unpacking decades of inherited shame about failure. My turn, I said finally. I've been so focused on proving I didn't need you that I forgot to consider whether I wanted you. The answer is yes. I want my family. Not perfect, not performing, just present. Even after everything Madison asked, especially after everything I confirmed, perfect families are boring. Give me messy truth over polished lies any day. Bradley, when he arrived, proved to be exactly what we needed, an outsider who'd chosen to see Madison's potential for growth rather than her history of mean girl behavior. He asked genuine questions about the hotels, the foundation, our grandmother. More importantly, he called Madison out when she slipped into performance mode. That's your society voice, he said gently after she'd given a practiced answer about supporting my success. I asked how you really feel about your sister's achievements. Madison paused, then answered honestly, jealous, proud, ashamed, inspired, terrified I'll never do anything that matters, all at once. That's better, Bradley approved. Real is always better. As the evening progressed, we found ourselves actually laughing. Nathan told stories from his residency that showed his humanity rather than his brilliance. Grace shared coding disasters that reminded us she could fail too. Madison admitted she'd been secretly reading self-help books trying to figure out who she was beyond labels. Family therapy, Mother announced suddenly. I found someone who specializes in family dynamics around success and failure. Will you all come? The agreement was unanimous. We needed professional help navigating years of dysfunction, and we were finally ready to admit it. But not at the hotels, Nathan added quickly. Neutral ground, no reminders of wealth or success, just us figuring out how to be us. My therapist has a colleague, I offered, Dr. Sarah Kim. She's brilliant with family systems, and she has no idea who any of us are professionally, which might help. Kim. Mother said, then caught herself. I was about to do it again. Judge based on a name. God, I have so much work to do. We all do, I assured her. That's the point. We're all under construction. As the evening wound down, something felt different. Not fixed, we were far from that, but possible. Like a foundation had been poured, and now we could start building something real on top of it. Same time next week, Grace asked. My place. I'll attempt cooking. Fair warning, I might accidentally optimize the recipes. Madison's teaching me to make cupcakes on Wednesday, I reminded them. Anyone else want to join? Nathan raised his hand. I need to remember there's joy in creating something without needing to be the best at it. Thursday coffee, Mother asked me. Just us. I have 50 years of questions about my daughter I never bothered to ask. As they prepared to leave, each carrying leftovers and tentative hope, Madison pulled me aside one more time. The Sterling name, she said. I judged you for taking it, but now I understand. It's not about choosing Arthur over us. It's about honoring everyone who helped you become who you are. Both families, I agreed. The one that raised me and the one that raised me up. Both matter. Loretta Bennett Sterling, she said, testing the full name. My sister, the woman who refuses to be just one thing. None of us are just one thing, I reminded her. That's what makes us interesting. As I drove home that night, Arthur's journal on the seat beside me, I thought about individual confrontations versus collective healing. Both were necessary. Patricia Sterling facing her entitlement, Nathan confronting his arrogance, Madison battling her superficiality, Grace wrestling with emotional distance, Mother unpacking inherited shame. And me, I was confronting the walls I'd built to protect myself from their rejection. Success had been my armor secrets, my shield. But real strength meant being vulnerable enough to try again, knowing we might fail, but believing we were worth the effort. My phone buzzed with a group text. Nathan had sent a photo of all of us at dinner, laughing at something Grace had said. We looked like a family, not perfect, not posed, but real. Week 1 of the rest of our lives, he'd written. Thanks for not giving up on us. I saved the photo, adding it to my favorites alongside the one of Arthur and me in the hospital. 2 families, both complicated, both essential to who I'd become. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The hotels needed attention, the foundation had events, the institute construction continued. But tonight, I'd had dinner with my family. My real family, not the performed version we'd been for too long. And that felt like the kind of success Arthur would have valued most. Monday morning brought rain and lawyers Seattle's most predictable combination. I sat in the conference room of Sterling Hotel's corporate offices, but this wasn't about business. Across from me, my family's legal representatives waited nervously. I'd requested this meeting after our dinner, realizing that genuine reconciliation required clear boundaries. Thank you for coming, I began. I've asked you here because moving forward requires structure, not to punish or control, but to ensure everyone understands the parameters of our new relationship. Mother's lawyer, an old family friend named Richard Barnes, shifted uncomfortably. Loretta, surely family matters don't require legal documentation. 5 years of family dysfunction suggests otherwise, I replied evenly. I'm not asking anyone to sign contracts. I'm establishing boundaries that protect everyone, including me. I distributed the documents I'd prepared with my legal team, not binding agreements, but clear statements of intent and expectation. First, I continued financial boundaries. No family member may request personal loans, business investments, or financial guarantees from me or Sterling Hotels. Any legitimate business proposals must go through standard channels like any other vendor or partner. Nathan nodded immediately. That's fair, more than fair. Second, media and social boundaries. No one discusses my net worth, the inheritance details, or Sterling Hotels business with press or on social media. Our family story stays private unless we collectively agree otherwise. What about the charity work? Grace asked. Can we mention the foundation? The foundation is public, I clarified, but our family dynamics around it stay private. You can say I run it, not how you found out or what that revelation meant to our relationships. Madison was reading ahead. This section about employment. No automatic jobs at Sterling Hotels for family members, I confirmed. If you want to work with me, you apply like anyone else, interview competitively, and earn your position. Nepotism would destroy everything Arthur and I built. That's actually a relief, Madison admitted. I've been thinking about what I want to do professionally, but I didn't want you to feel obligated to create a position for me. Mother had been quiet, but now she spoke. The therapy requirement. You're serious about that? Dead serious, I said. Individual therapy for anyone who wants an active relationship with me. Family therapy once a month minimum for the next year. Dr. Kim has agreed to take us on. What if we refuse? Richard asked on Mother's behalf. Then we maintain cordial distance, I said simply. I'll see you at major holidays, exchange pleasantries, but we won't build anything deeper. The choice is yours. It's not really a choice, Mother said softly. Not if we want our daughter back. You never lost me, I corrected. You just stopped seeing me. The therapy is to help us all see clearly. Nathan raised his hand. I've already booked my first individual session. Emma's agreed to couples counseling too if I do the personal work first. Good, I said, genuinely pleased. Now the harder part, acknowledgement and accountability. I stood moving to the windows overlooking Seattle's skyline. I need each of you to publicly acknowledge your behavior. Not to shame you, but because secrets and denial are what broke us. Own your actions, then we can move past them. Publicly, Madison squeaked, like a press release. Like honesty with the people who matter, I clarified. Nathan, that means telling your colleagues you've been an arrogant ass and you're working on it. Madison, it means admitting to your social circle that you've valued appearances over authenticity. Mother, it means being honest with your friends about why I wasn't at family gatherings. They'll judge us, Mother said. They already do, Grace pointed out. At least this way they're judging truth instead of facades. I'll go first, Nathan said suddenly. I have grand rounds this week. Perfect opportunity to model humility for the residents I've been terrorizing with my superiority complex. The room felt different, charged with possibility, but also fear. Change was terrifying, especially for people who'd built identities on shaky foundations. There's more, I said, returning to my seat. Restitution. We can't pay back emotional damage, Madison said quietly. Not that kind of restitution, I assured her. I want each of you to commit to helping someone the way you failed to help me. Nathan mentor a struggling medical student without making them feel inferior. Madison volunteer with women rebuilding after failure. Grace teach coding to kids who think they're not smart enough. Mother work with parents who've let shame distance them from their children. Pay it forward, Mother murmured. Help others to heal ourselves. Exactly. What about you? Grace asked. What's your commitment in all this? Patience, I said immediately. Forgiveness when you slip up, because you will. Presence even when it's uncomfortable. And honesty, no more hiding my success or pretending your rejection didn't hurt. It did hurt, didn't it? Madison said. We broke your heart over and over and you just kept succeeding anyway. Success was my revenge at first, I admitted. Then it became my purpose. Now I want it to be something we share, not the money, but the meaning. Building things that matter, helping people who need it, creating legacy beyond wealth. Richard cleared his throat. This is all very touching, but what happens if someone violates these boundaries? Then we return to polite distance, I said firmly. I won't be manipulated by family any more than by strangers. These terms aren't negotiable. They're the price of genuine relationship with me. You've thought this through, Mother observed. I've had 5 years to think, I reminded her. 5 years of birthdays, alone holidays, excluded achievements, uncelebrated. I know exactly what I need to move forward. We accept, Nathan said immediately, all of it. The therapy, the boundaries, the accountability, whatever it takes. One by one, the others agreed. Even Mother, though I could see the struggle in her face. A lifetime of carefully curated appearances was hard to release. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. This is a family mission statement, not legally binding, just aspirational, what we want to be for each other. Grace read it aloud. The Bennett Sterling family commits to radical honesty, genuine support, and celebrating each other's growth over achievements. We measure success by kindness connection, by presence and love, by actions rather than words. We fail forward together, succeed with humility, and always remember that family is both a gift and a choice we make daily. You want us to sign this? Madison asked. I want us to live it, I corrected. Signing is just symbolic. Nathan grabbed a pen first. If we're doing this, let's do it right. He signed with a flourish. There. First time I've put my name on something that wasn't about my medical achievements. The others followed, even Richard signing as witness. When everyone had finished, I added my signature, Loretta Bennett Sterling, both names claiming space. Now what? Mother asked. Now we do the work, I said. Therapy starts Thursday. I've arranged for Dr. Kim to see us as a group first, then individually. She's cleared her evening schedule. Must be nice to have influence, Madison said, then caught herself. Sorry, that was the old me talking. It's okay, I assured her. Old patterns die hard. That's why we need professional help. As the meeting concluded and my family prepared to leave, each carrying their copy of our agreements and aspirations, Nathan lingered. Emma texted during the meeting, he said. I told her about all this, the boundaries, therapy, accountability. She said it's the first time in years I've sounded like the man she married. There's hope then. Maybe, he said. If I can become someone worth coming back to, someone who doesn't need to be the smartest person in every room. You were never the smartest person in every room, Grace said, overhearing. You were just the loudest about it. See? Nathan said with a rueful smile. I'm learning already. As they filed out, Madison caught my arm. The volunteer work with women rebuilding after failure, were you thinking of something specific? The foundation runs a program called Second Chances, I said. We pair mentors with women recovering from bankruptcy, divorce, addiction, any major life failure. You'd be perfect for it. Even though I've never failed at anything, she asked. Haven't you? I countered gently. Your marriage almost ended because you were performing instead of living. That's a kind of failure, too. When you put it that way, she murmured. Yes, I guess I have failed, just more privately than you did. All failure teaches, I reminded her. The question is whether we learn. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room staring at the signed documents. Paper couldn't fix relationships, but it could provide structure for the fixing. Like blueprints for a building, these agreements gave us something to reference when things got difficult. Marcus appeared in the doorway. How'd it go, boss? They all agreed, I said. Therapy boundaries, accountability, restitution, everything. You sound surprised. I am, I admitted. Part of me expected them to choose their comfort over connection, to decide I was asking too much. Maybe 5 years ago they would have, Marcus suggested. But seeing you now, what you've built, who you've become, it changes the calculation. You're not the family failure asking for acceptance. You're the family success offering second chances. I don't want to be either, I said. I just want to be Loretta, their daughter and sister. The titles shouldn't matter. But they do, Marcus said gently. That's humanity for you. We see achievements before character, wealth before worth. At least your family's trying to reverse that now. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Just scheduled my first therapy session. Terrified but committed. Thank you for not giving up on us. Then Madison signed up for Second Chances mentor training. Starts next month. Bradley's proud of me. I'm proud of me too. Nathan. Told my surgical team I've been an ass and I'm working on it. They applauded. Literally. Turns out everyone's been waiting for me to admit it. Mother coffee. Thursday after therapy, I want to learn who my daughter really is. All these years, and I realize I don't know your favorite color or if you prefer sunrise or sunset. I failed you in so many small ways along with the big ones. I responded to each, encouraging their steps forward while maintaining the boundaries we'd established. This was the beginning of something new, not perfect family harmony, but honest family effort. Standing, I gathered the signed documents. Tomorrow they'd be filed with my personal papers, not because they were legally binding, but because they represented a promise we'd made to each other. To try, to grow, to choose family not from obligation but intention. The Sterling Hotel's empire would continue to expand. The foundation would help more people. The Culinary Institute would train new dreamers. But none of that success would mean as much as what we'd started today, 5 people committed to becoming the family we should have been all along. Arthur would have approved, not of the documents or structure, but of the intention behind them. He'd known that true legacy wasn't what you built, but who you built it with. And finally, my family was ready to build something together. Not an empire of hotels, but something more valuable, a foundation of trust, strong enough to support whatever came next, and that more than any business success felt like the achievement of a lifetime. Thursday evening arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made Seattle winters bearable. Our first family therapy session had just ended, leaving us all emotionally raw but strangely hopeful. Dr. Kim had guided us through initial exercises in listening, without defending, speaking, without attacking. Baby steps, she'd called them, learning to walk again as a family. Now we stood outside the restaurant, not the Sterling Grand's 5-star dining room, but a small Italian place in Wallingford that Dad had suggested. Neutral ground, he'd said, somewhere we can just be family without the weight of success or failure hanging over us. I need carbs after that session, Madison muttered, still dabbing at her eyes. The therapy had hit her particularly hard when Dr. Kim asked her to describe me without using any achievements or failures, just who I was as a person. She'd struggled realizing how little she knew her own sister beyond labels. We all do, Nathan agreed. He looked exhausted but clearer somehow, like someone who'd finally put down a heavy load. Who knew talking about feelings for 90 minutes could be more draining than a 12-hour surgery? Inside the restaurant was warm and unpretentious checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread. Dad had arrived early, claiming a corner table big enough for our expanded group. Bradley had come to support Madison, Emma had surprisingly joined Nathan, and even Grace's ex-boyfriend Marcus, not my Marcus, confusingly enough, had accepted her tentative invitation to join us. "Before we sit," Dad said, standing with a slight grimace that reminded us of his heart condition. "I want to say something. This is still my birthday week, and I've had 70 years to think about what matters. It's not money or achievements or perfect families. It's this people you love choosing to grow together. So tonight we celebrate that choice." We settled around the table, the seating arrangement telling its own story. In the past, we'd have clustered by success level Nathan and Madison together, Grace with whoever she was dating me on the periphery. Now we mix naturally, conversations flowing across old boundaries. "I have an announcement," Emma said suddenly, her hand finding Nathan's. "We've decided to make the separation permanent." Nathan's face fell and she squeezed his hand permanently over. We're moving back in together, starting fresh with new rules and real communication. "Emma," Nathan breathed, tears threatening. "Really?" "Really," she confirmed. The man who admitted to his surgical team that he'd been an insufferable ass who signed up for therapy and accountability, that's the man I married. He just got lost for a while under Dr. Perfect. Madison raised her water glass. "To finding our way back, all of us." As we toasted, the waiter appeared with menus. Dad waved them away. "I already ordered for the table, family style. We're sharing everything tonight." "Control issues, Dad," Grace teased gently. "Definitely," he agreed cheerfully. "But I'm 70. I've earned some benevolent dictatorship rights." The food arrived in waves: antipasti Caesar salad, pasta, arrabbiata chicken marsala, eggplant parmesan. We passed dishes like we hadn't in years, the simple act of sharing food, somehow healing. Bradley helped Madison navigate the vegetarian options, while Grace's Marcus asked genuine questions about the family dynamics, trying to understand the woman he'd loved and lost to her analytical distance. "So," Emma said, twirling linguine, "I have to know. What was the moment you realized Loretta owned the hotel, like the exact instant it clicked?" Madison nearly choked on her wine. "When the security guard called her Ms. Sterling, I thought she'd hired actors. My brain literally couldn't process that my failure of a sister, sorry, Loretta Old Habits, actually owned the building I was blocking her from entering. For me, it was the manager's face, Nathan added, the way he looked at her with such deference. You can't fake that kind of respect. I think I knew something was different before that, Mother said quietly. The way she stood, the way she didn't crumble when we were cruel. The Loretta who failed at the bakery would have been destroyed by our rejection. This Loretta seemed untouchable. I wasn't untouchable, I corrected. I was just practiced at hiding the hurt. 5 years of legal battles teach you to show strength even when you're bleeding inside. Speaking of 5 years, Grace said, I've been wondering, what was the hardest part? Not the business stuff, the family stuff. I considered the question absently tearing off a piece of garlic bread. Christmas, 3 years ago. I just won the final legal battle. The hotels were officially mine. I was sitting in Arthur's penthouse looking out at the city lights completely alone. I could have bought anything, gone anywhere, but all I wanted was to be at Mom's house decorating cookies with my family. I made cookies that year, Madison said softly. Burned half of them because I was drinking too much wine and complaining about the charity gala I had to plan. We threw them away. While I was eating Chinese takeout from a box, I said, managing a smile, See, we all have our sob stories. But yours is sadder, Mother insisted. Success without family to share it with, that's a special kind of loneliness. Can we not rank our pain? Dr. Kim's voice echoed in all our minds from the session. Everyone's struggles are valid. Dad laughed. Look at us using therapy speak already. Dr. Kim's going to be so proud. The main courses gave way to dessert tiramisu and cannoli and panna cotta. Dad insisted on candles in the tiramisu, the restaurant staff gamely singing happy birthday in a mix of English and Italian. Make a wish, I urged him. He closed his eyes, then blew out the candles with surprising vigor. Already came true, he said, looking around the table. All my children in one place being real with each other. Even got bonus kids with the spouses. About that, Bradley said, clearing his throat nervously. Madison and I have been talking. About kids, I mean. We want to start trying, but we want to do it right. Not as accessories or achievements, but as actual humans we're responsible for raising. Which means I need to become someone worth looking up to first, Madison added. Hence the therapy and the volunteer work and learning to be authentic instead of perfect. You're already worth looking up to, Bradley said firmly. You faced down those protesters. You admitted your flaws. You're choosing growth over comfort. That's heroic in my book. I watched Madison tear up at the genuine praise so different from the shallow compliments she'd collected for years. This was what she'd been starving for, real recognition of real growth. Since we're sharing news, Grace said, Marcus and I are talking again. Just talking, she added quickly, but I'm trying to be present instead of analytical, to feel things without immediately creating spreadsheets about them. Her Marcus smiled. She sent me a text yesterday that just said, I miss you. No data points, no analysis, just feeling. It was perfect. Progress, Nathan agreed. Emma, tell them about my new thing. Emma grinned. He started a support group at the hospital for doctors dealing with superiority complexes and empathy deficits. They call it Arrogant Anonymous. You didn't? I laughed. I did, Nathan confirmed. First meeting is next week. 12 surgeons have already signed up. Turns out I wasn't the only one who lost himself in his own ego. This is wonderful, Mother said, and I realized she meant it. Not the achievements, but the growth, the vulnerability, the choice to be better. My children becoming the people they were meant to be. We're trying, Mom, Grace said. All of us, even you. Mother nodded, touching the simple gold necklace she wore instead of her usual pearls. I donated my designer clothes today. All of them. Kept the basics, but the rest went to the women's shelter. If I'm going to work with parents who've let shame control them, I need to stop letting labels define me. Dad reached over and took her hand. Proud of you, Ev. Know how hard that was. Not as hard as admitting I need to change, she replied. But Loretta showed us that rock bottom can be a foundation. I'm choosing to build something better on mine. The evening continued with more food, more stories, more moments of genuine connection. Nathan made us laugh with tales from his arrogant, anonymous planning sessions. Madison shared her nerves about the Second Chances training. Grace explained her new coding curriculum for underprivileged kids, deliberately keeping it simple and jargon-free. "What about you, Loretta?" Emma asked. "What's next for the hotel empire?" "Honestly," I said, "the empire runs itself at this point. Good people, good systems. What's next for me is this learning to be a sister again, a daughter. Maybe someday an aunt if Madison and Bradley's plans work out. The family stuff is harder than running businesses." "But more rewarding," Dad prompted. "Ask me in a year," I said with a smile, "when we've had time to really test these new patterns." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my Marcus. "Sorry to interrupt family time, but thought you'd want to know. The Portland Hotel's star chef just won a James Beard Award. Press wants a statement." I showed the text to the table. This is the challenge, balancing both worlds, the business that demands attention and the family that deserves it. "So delegate," Mother suggested, then caught herself. "Sorry, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your empire." "No, you're right," I said, texting Marcus back to handle the press release. "I need to trust my team more. Can't rebuild family relationships if I'm always putting out hotel fires." Even metaphorical ones. Nathan added, and we all remembered Grace's apartment building's small fire 3 years ago, when I'd been too busy to help her relocate. Another failure of prioritizing business over family. The waiter brought the check and Dad reached for it, but I was faster. "My treat," I insisted. "And before anyone makes it weird, I'm not paying because I'm rich. I'm paying because it's Dad's birthday, and that's what daughters do." "Thank you," Dad said, simply understanding the distinction mattered. As we prepared to leave full of pasta and possibility, Mother stood. "I know we've done a lot of toasting tonight, but one more. To Arthur Sterling." We looked at her in surprise. "He saved my daughter when I failed her," she continued. "Gave her purpose when I only saw failure. Loved her like family when her actual family forgot how. I never met him, but I'm grateful every day that he existed." To Arthur, we chorused even Madison and Nathan, who'd resented the inheritance, raising their glasses. "And to Grandma Rose," I added, "whose recipes started everything, whose values feed people, love them, create community, guided both the failure and the success that followed." "To Second Chances," Madison said. "To family therapy," Grace laughed. "To doing better," Nathan offered. "To all of us," Dad concluded, perfectly imperfect and finally honest about it. Outside the restaurant, we lingered on the sidewalk, nobody quite ready for the evening to end. The December air was sharp, but the warmth of connection kept us talking, planning, hoping. "Same time next week," Nathan asked, "after therapy." "My place," I offered. "I'll cook. Fair warning, I've been running hotels so long I might have forgotten how." "We'll help," Madison said immediately. "All of us. Cooking together sounds perfect." As we finally dispersed to our separate cars, Dad pulled me aside. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for forgiving us this chance, for becoming who you are despite us." "Because of you, too," I corrected. "You never stopped believing I had value even when I had nothing. That call after the auction saved me, Dad. You saved me." "Then we saved each other," he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of aftershave and garlic bread and home. That's what families do. Driving back to my apartment, I thought about the evening. No dramatic revelations this time, no shocking truths or painful confrontations. Just a family sharing a meal, telling stories, choosing to be present with each other. It was ordinary in the best way, the kind of ordinary we'd lost and were slowly finding again. My phone lit up with the group chat. "Nathan, thanks for tonight. All of it. Madison, best therapy session and dinner combo ever. Grace, Data analysis, 100% improvement in family functioning. Mother, I love you all. Even when you were strangers, I loved you. Now I get to like you too. Dad, best birthday week ever. All my wishes came true. I smiled, adding my own message, this is just the beginning. Love you all. And it was. Not the end of our story, but the start of a new chapter. One where success was measured in shared meals and honest words, where wealth meant having people who chose to grow alongside you, where the greatest achievement was showing up for each other, imperfect but present. The Sterling hotels would continue to thrive. The foundation would change more lives. The Culinary Institute would train new dreamers. But tonight we'd achieved something harder than any business success. We'd been a family. Not because we had to be, but because we wanted to be. And that was worth more than all the hotels in the world. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming kitchen of Grandma Rose's Culinary Institute, watching the first class of students practice their lamination technique for croissants. The building had been completed ahead of schedule, every detail exactly as we'd envisioned, from the vintage-inspired fixtures that honored the past to the state-of-the-art equipment that promised a bright future. Fold, don't press. I coached Maria Gonzalez, the student whose application had moved Madison to tears all those months ago. The butter needs to stay in distinct layers. That's what creates the flakiness. Yes, chef, Maria said, then caught herself. I mean, Miss Sterling, sorry. Loretta is fine, I corrected gently. I'm not a chef, just someone who learned from the best. Through the teaching kitchen's windows, I could see my family arriving for today's event. We'd planned this as a soft opening, family, friends, and donors getting a first look at what their support had built. But for me, it was something more. A full-circle moment that even Arthur couldn't have orchestrated better. Madison entered first, her appearance transformed from 6 months ago. Gone were the designer labels and perfect facade. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair in a ponytail, carrying a box of supplies for the Second Chances booth she was setting up in the lobby. Behind her, Bradley carried their 3-month-old daughter, Rose, named for our grandmother and born into a family that had learned to value authenticity over appearances. She slept through the night. Madison announced, proudly kissing my flour-dusted cheek. First time. I feel like a new person. You look happy, I observed, and it was true. The brittle perfection had been replaced by something softer, realer. I am, she said simply. Exhausted, covered in spit-up half the time, and happier than I've ever been. Who knew that being a mentor to struggling women and a mom to this tiny human would be more fulfilling than planning charity galas? Nathan arrived next with Emma, both of them laughing at something on his phone. The last 6 months had transformed their marriage from a performance to a partnership. Nathan's arrogant anonymous group had grown into a hospital-wide initiative on physician wellness and humility. He'd even been invited to speak at medical conferences about combating ego in healthcare. Loretta, Emma called out, "You have to see this. Nathan's been voted Most Improved Personality by the surgical residents." It was a joke award. Nathan protested, but his grin said he was delighted. Though apparently my approval ratings have gone from terrifying overlord to tough but fair mentor. So I'll take it. Grace and Marcus, her Marcus, now officially her fiancé, followed hand in hand. Their reconciliation had been slow but steady, built on Grace's commitment to experiencing life rather than analyzing it. She still ran her tech company, but had added a humanities coach to her staff to ensure their products remained human-centered. "The live stream is all set up," Grace announced. "We'll be broadcasting the opening ceremony to all 47 hotels. Your staff wanted to celebrate with you." "Our staff," I corrected. "This is a family achievement now." Mother entered last with Dad, both of them looking years younger than they had 6 months ago. The therapy had been transformative, helping Mother unpack decades of shame about her own business failure and its impact on her parenting. She now co-facilitated a support group for parents estranged from their children, teaching others what she'd learned about choosing connection over control. The second-floor classroom is perfect. she told me. I can already picture the parent workshops happening there. Supporting your child's dreams, even when they differ from your own, that's next month's topic. Subtle. I laughed. Think anyone will guess it's autobiographical? I hope so, she said seriously. Our story, the pain and the healing, can help others avoid our mistakes. As the morning progressed, the building filled with life. Donors toured the facilities, students demonstrated their skills, and the smell of fresh bread wafted from every corner. But the moment that stopped me in my tracks came when I entered the main demonstration kitchen. There at the central teaching station stood Chef Raymond from the Sterling Grand. But he wasn't alone. Beside him, wearing matching aprons and nervous smiles, were Madison, Nathan, and Grace. On the counter in front of them, the mise en place for Grandma Rose's famous Christmas cookies. Surprise, Madison said, bouncing baby Rose gently. We've been taking secret lessons from Chef Raymond. Today we teach our first class together Grandma's cookies for the incoming students. But that recipe belongs to all of us, Nathan finished. We're the Bennett siblings. These are our grandmother's cookies. It's time we all learn to make them properly. I felt tears threatening as I watched them work together, Chef Raymond guiding but letting them lead. Madison measured ingredients with scientific precision. Nathan's surgeon hands proved surprisingly adept at delicate decorating work. Grace had created a digital recipe card that tracked timing and temperature perfectly while still honoring the original handwritten version. "Join us," Grace called. "We saved the best part for you." The best part was, of course, the final assembly. As I moved to the teaching station, I found myself surrounded not just by my siblings, but by the student staff and supporters who'd become extended family. Maria Gonzalez stood ready to take notes. Other students gathered close, understanding they were witnessing something special. The secret to Grandma Rose's cookies. I began my voice carrying across the kitchen, isn't in the recipe. It's in the intention. She baked with love, not just ingredients. She fed people's hearts, not just their stomachs. Today, we're going to do the same. For the next hour, we baked together. 4 siblings who'd found their way back to each other, teaching 20 students who were finding their way forward. The cookies emerged perfect, golden, fragrant, decorated with the same careful love Grandma Rose had put into everything she touched. "Now we share them," Mother announced, appearing with plates. "Everyone here gets one. That's the rule, no hoarding beauty. It's meant to be shared." As cookies were distributed and exclaimed over, Dad pulled me aside. "I have something for you." He handed me an envelope worn and yellowed with age. Inside was a letter in Grandma Rose's handwriting. "My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, it means you found your way back to baking. I always knew you would. The girl who saved allowance to buy me a mixer could never stay away from kitchens forever. I hope you've learned what I tried to teach, that failure is just the first rise. You punch it down, let it rest, and rise again, stronger and better. Feed people, love them. Create community. The rest will follow. All my love, Grandma Rose." She wrote it when you opened the bakery, Dad explained. "Gave it to me to save for when you needed it. I think now is the right time." I clutched the letter, overwhelmed by love that transcended time and loss. She knew I'd fail. "She knew you'd learn," he corrected, "just like she did, just like we all do if we're brave enough to try." The afternoon ceremony was beautiful, but almost anticlimactic after the morning's emotions. I cut the ribbon with the same scissors Grandma Rose had used for her bakery 50 years ago. The students performed a flash mob of sorts, presenting dishes they'd mastered in their first weeks. The mayor spoke about second chances and the power of believing in people's potential. But the moment that mattered most came at the end when I stood before the crowd, donors, students, family, and one unexpected guest. Evelyn Sterling Arthur's ex-wife sat in the front row. At 91, she remained formidable, her presence commanding attention. She'd asked to speak, and I'd agreed, curious what she might say. My ex-husband was a complicated man. She began, her voice still strong. Brilliant at business, terrible at family, until he met Loretta. She taught him something his own children never could, that legacy isn't what you leave behind, but who you lift up along the way. This institute proves she learned that lesson well. She paused, eyes finding mine. Arthur would be so proud, not of the hotels or the wealth, but of this creating opportunities for others to rise from their own ashes. That's true success. As applause filled the room, I thought about the journey from that bathroom floor where Arthur found me crying to this kitchen, where dreams were already taking shape. The path had been anything but straight through bankruptcy and betrayal isolation, and empire-building family fracture and careful reconciliation. Speech, someone called out, and others took up the chant. I moved to the microphone, looking out at the assembled crowd. My family stood together near the front, not perfectly arranged by status anymore, but naturally clustered by affection. Madison bounced baby Rose, who'd woken up and was cooing at the ceiling. Nathan had his arm around Emma. Grace and her Marcus whispered about something on her phone. Mother and Dad held hands, their wedding rings catching the light. 6 years ago, I lost everything. My business failed. My family distanced themselves. My dreams crumbled into bankruptcy documents. I thought it was the end of my story. The room was silent, everyone leaning in. But failure, I learned, is just the first draft. You revise, you edit, you try again. Sometimes you need help, a mentor like Arthur Sterling who sees potential where others see problems. Sometimes you need time, years of rebuilding both businesses and trust. Always you need hope, the belief that your story isn't over yet. I found Maria Gonzalez in the crowd, already emotional. To our students, I say this: you're here because life knocked you down and you chose to get up. That's courage. We're here to give you tools, but you already have the most important ingredient, the determination to rise. To our donors and supporters, I continued, thank you for believing that second chances aren't just charity, but investment. Every person in this room is proof that failure isn't final unless we make it so. And to my family, I said, my voice catching slightly, thank you for choosing growth over comfort, connection over pride and love, over the labels that divided us. We're all works in progress, and I'm honored to be under construction alongside you. Madison was crying now, not caring about her mascara. Nathan cleared his throat repeatedly. Grace had abandoned her phone entirely. Mother smiled through her tears while Dad stood taller, prouder than I'd ever seen him. Grandma Rose used to say that good food was love made tangible, I concluded. This institute is our love made tangible love for those who've stumbled for dreams, deferred but not destroyed, for the belief that everyone deserves a chance to discover what they're capable of becoming. Welcome to Grandma Rose's. May all who enter hungry leave, satisfied not just in body but in spirit. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. My family had surged forward, surrounding me in a group hug that smelled of cookies and possibility. Baby Rose, caught in the middle, laughed with pure joy, and I thought how perfect it was, new life surrounded by a family that had chosen to be reborn. Later, as the celebration wound down and the last guest departed, I found myself alone in the teaching kitchen with my siblings. We'd started cleaning up, falling into an easy rhythm of cooperation that would have been impossible 6 months ago. So, Nathan said, drying dishes, what's next? Another hotel? Another foundation project? Actually, I said, I was thinking of taking a sabbatical, not from the business that runs itself now, but from the constant achieving. Maybe spend some time just being a sister, an aunt, a daughter. You not achieving something? Grace teased. That'll be the day. Being a good family member is an achievement, I countered. Maybe the hardest one. I'd like to master that next. We all would, Madison agreed, settling baby Rose in her carrier, though I think we're off to a good start. As we finished cleaning and prepared to leave, I took one last look around the kitchen, where so many dreams would rise. On the wall hung a photo of Grandma Rose, the one from her bakery, where she stood surrounded by fresh bread and possibility. Next to it, someone, probably Dad, had hung a photo from today, the 4 Bennett siblings, covered in flour, laughing as we taught cookie making together. Full circle. Mother said, joining me. From her bakery to yours to this. She'd be so proud. Of all of us, I said firmly, we all found our way back to what matters. As we locked up and headed to our cars, the family group chat lit up with dinner plans, therapy schedules, and baby photos. Normal family stuff, the kind I'd craved during those lonely years of success without connection. "Hey," Madison called out as I reached my car. "Thank you for not giving up on us, for showing us that failure isn't final, for being the sister we didn't deserve but desperately needed." "Thank you for coming back," I replied, "for choosing growth, for proving that families can heal. Grandma Rose would say we're like her bread dough," Nathan added, joining us. "Knocked down, but rising again stronger for the resting time between." Terrible metaphor. Grace laughed, but she was nodding. Accurate, but terrible. As we said our goodbyes and headed to our separate homes, but with plans to gather again tomorrow and the next day, and all the days after, I thought about what success really meant. It wasn't the 47 hotels or the billion-dollar valuation. It wasn't the foundation or the institute or the lives changed through both. It was this, a family that had shattered and chosen to rebuild, not around wealth or achievement, but around love, honesty, and the daily choice to show up for each other. The empire would continue to grow. The foundation would help more people. The institute would train new dreamers. But the greatest success was the text that lit up my phone as I drove home. "Dad, proud of you, sweetheart. Not for what you've built, but for who you've become, and for bringing us all along for the journey. Love you." I pulled over to respond, not trusting my teary eyes to drive safely. "Love you too, Dad. All of you. Forever and always, no matter what." And that love without conditions, family without facades, success measured in connection rather than collections, was the greatest fortune of all. Arthur had given me an empire, but my family had given me something more valuable themselves, flawed and striving and absolutely perfect in their imperfection. The girl who'd cried on a bathroom floor had become a woman who built hotels and hopes in equal measure. But more importantly, she'd become someone who understood that the greatest structures weren't made of marble and money, but of forgiveness growth and the grace to begin again. And again. And again. As many times as it took to get it right. If you've stayed with my story this far, thank you. I hope it reminds you that failure is just the first chapter, not the final word. That families can heal if everyone does the work. That success without connection is just expensive loneliness. And that sometimes the best revenge against those who dismissed you is not proving them wrong, but giving them the chance to grow into people who can celebrate your success with genuine joy. Whatever you're facing, bankruptcy or betrayal, family fractures, or personal failures, remember that your story isn't over. Find your Arthur Sterling, the person who sees your potential when you can't. Be that person for someone else. Build something meaningful. And never forget that the greatest legacy isn't what you leave behind, but who you lift up along the way. Thank you for sharing in our journey. May your own path be filled with second chances, genuine connection, and the courage to rise as many times as it takes. What challenges have you faced with family forgiveness or finding your way after failure? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear that failure isn't final. It's just the beginning of something better. Like and subscribe to follow more stories of hope, healing, and the complicated beauty of being human. Because we're all works in progress, and that's exactly as it should be. With love and croissants, Loretta Bennett Sterling.